Let's get peppy. Welcome to PEP 133. That's PEP or Planet Extra podcast. It's an offshoot of Planet America on the ABC Australia, which you can see on Friday at 8 p.m. on ABC News Channel and Wednesday at 9:30 p.m. on ABC TV and on iView and on Facebook at ABC Planet America and on YouTube at the ABC In-Depth channel. On PEP, we cover all the stuff that's too nerdy for TV. If you're listening, you can also see this podcast on Facebook and on YouTube. And that's where you'll see Dr. Pepper himself, Dr. Dave Smith. Hey, Dave, tell us what we need to know.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. David Smith. I work at the United States Study Centre at the University of Sydney. However, I don't speak for either of those institutions. What you are getting is my personal commentary on things for which nobody else is responsible.
Very good, Dr. Dave. Now, we got more comments about something to do with our video last week than anything in the history of this podcast, which was, your hair.
Oh, right.
when you didn't have it in a ponytail for the first time, and the reason you didn't was because you were getting a haircut.
Yeah, it was because I was getting it cut. The hairdresser that I was going to has this stipulation that you don't tie it back after washing it in the morning. So, yes, I did get it. I mean, trimmed might be a more accurate description of what was going on.
Yeah.
But it was still the first time in like 24 years that even that much had happened to it.
I raise that simply because I'm going to try and break the record for the number of comments we've gotten about something in our video before.
Yeah.
By just using 3 words. And that's it. The words Weird Al Yankovic. And I'll just leave it at that. Anyway, Dave, tell us what you're grateful for.
I didn't even think about this.
That's okay.
I'm reading Philip Roth's last novel at the moment, Nemesis, which is it's a very good one. It's about the polio outbreak in Newark in 1944. Very good. Very sad. It's not like one of his raunchy comedies. It's quite depressing, but it's very good.
Okay, is it on the list? We put it on the book list?
Put it on the list.
Okay, so if you want to know about the book list, you can see in the blurb on under our Facebook or our YouTube video. So it's Philip Roth, what was it?
Nemesis.
I'm going to be, someone in the comments, I wasn't prepared for this, so I don't know their name.
Okay.
Suggested that from now on we should put the episode and time signature of when you talk about these books in the book list so people can hear you talk about it.
Okay.
As a little précis, which I think is a great idea.
Yes, yeah.
But I'm damned if I'm going through 132 episodes.
Yeah. We've got a lot to go back through.
Yeah, well, just from now on, we might do that. It's a great idea. What I'm grateful for, Dave, is Tim Scott dropping out. And I'll tell you why. That sounds mean, but it's not actually mean. The reason why is because
it's ended the marital discourse in the Will household.
That is good news for the George Will household that you're referring to there. Because George Will is a Conservative columnist. His wife is part of Tim Scott's campaign team.
Yeah.
And George Will's been campaigning for Tim Scott to drop out. So that is good.
Imagine campaighing in the Washington Post to get your wife to listen to something that you're saying.
Yeah. George Will strikes me as that kind of guy.
Yeah.
Yes. No, I'll tell you why. First of all, he didn't have to drop out. He still had a few $1 million in the bank.
Yes.
Okay. He could have kept it. George Will's wife could have made more money out of it.
Yeah.
Right. And he had at least 2 weeks.
Yes.
Till he was obviously not going to qualify for the next debate.
Right.
So
there's another debate.
There's another debate. They haven't learnt their lessons yet, Dave.
God help me, but I'm beginning to agree with Trump on the subject of Republican debates. I'm really not sure they should still be happening.
They should all drop out. I got to say, he didn't have to drop out, and I am shocked by the self-awareness that both he and Mike Pence have shown.
Wow.
Of dropping out. Now, I know you probably think both of them dropped out too late. But
yes,
I think
they did.
Let me put it this way. Let me explain the standard when it comes to Republicans, or not just Republicans, anyone dropping out. This time, 8 years ago, 2016.
Yep.
Let's actually jump a month forward. December 15, 2015.
Yep.
These are some of the candidates who are still going at that point in time, who hadn't dropped out.
Yep.
Okay? I'm not reading every candidate. I'm just reading out some special candidates.
Yes, yeah.
All of these people are still going December 15 in the 2016 cycle. Carly Fiorina, Jim Gilmore, Lindsey Graham, Mike Huckabee, Rand Paul, Rick Santorum, George Pataki. George Pataki, Dave, I didn't even remember that he ran in 2016.
I'm struggling to remember who Jim Gilmore even was.
He's a governor of Virginia, like in the 90s.
Wow.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Oh, yeah, and I'd forgotten that Pataki ran.
And Tim Scott and Mike Pence, who both at one point in time polled damn near 10%.
Yeah.
Dropped out before any of those people, a month before any of those people.
My God, do you remember the excitement about Carlton Fiorina?
I thought you were going to say George Pataki. Was there excitement about Carly Fiorina?
There was absolutely excitement about Carly Fiorina.
Maybe in your circles.
I'd say there would be basically 100% Venn diagram overlap between people who were excited about Carlton P. Fiorina, which, by the way, is her real name.
Carlton?
Yes.
Like from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
As the Republican candidate and Mike Bloomberg as Democratic candidate. It is absolutely the same people.
And I think they're also the same people that would have been excited by her being Ted Cruz's vice presidential nomination during the 2016 primary as well.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, she had 2 bites of the cherry.
Yeah.
Anyway, my point is those guys were still in a month's time.
Yeah.
So Tim Scott and Mike Pence have shown significantly more self-awareness than any of them.
Oh, congratulations. You've shown more self-awareness than George Pataki and Carlton.
But also, I'm grateful.
Yes.
I'm grateful that it gives realistic candidates a chance.
Yep.
Not that they have a big chance, but yeah, like it's a difference between 1% and 0%.
That's
right?
true. Yeah, yep.
And also I'm grateful because I want the pain to end for Tim Scott. He seems like a nice guy.
He does seem like a nice guy.
I know he says some insane things at debates, but he seems like a nice guy.
He does.
Like, I particularly thought, at the moment I thought, you've really got to drop out, mate, was when he felt pressured to start parading his girlfriend on stage at the end of the last debate.
Yes, yeah.
Right? And because I was thinking to myself, there are only 2 scenarios now when he's doing that. Number one, he's a painfully shy 58-year-old who has literally never had a girlfriend in his life and desperately wants to keep her out of the public limelight.
Yeah.
That's one option.
Yeah.
The second option is he's gay and feeling pressured to pretend he's not gay by GOP donors. That's the second option. Whatever option it is, I don't care. Either way, it's horrible, and I want it to end right now.
Are you aware of his history with this? Because part of his shtick was saying he was a virgin.
Yeah, I did not know that.
Because he was not going to have sex until he got married.
Yeah.
At some point, he actually he felt compelled to reveal that he was no longer a virgin.
Sure.
In the interest of accountability.
Well, I'm not interested in his sex, but
yes.
sex life.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that I know that his lifelong friends have said I have never seen him. He's never had a girlfriend.
Yeah.
Yeah, he might have had sex once or twice, but he's never had a girlfriend,
yeah.
right? And he's 58. So either he's one of those 2 options.
Yeah.
Either he's super, super, super shy and doesn't want his girlfriend anywhere near the spotlight.
Yeah.
Or number 2, he's gay and he's pretending. Either way, I don't care, but it's horrible. And I wanted the pain to end on his behalf.
I'm pretty sure it's actually option 1.
Yeah, it may well be. I'm not, like I said, I'm not casting aspersions. I'm saying either way, you lose. Mm-hmm. And so for that reason, I'm glad that he's out of his pain. And
I agree.
I'm grateful. So yeah. We got some correspondence on Florida. This was involving Bill, not involving you, but I'm just getting you up to date. We talked about the Florida case being not delayed. That at one point in time that Trump's lawyers were trying to push for a delay.
Yes.
And they thought they got a delay, but then they immediately ran back to Washington and said and tried to put that case off. And they had cited the Washington case as the reason the Florida case was delayed. And so then Jack Smith said to Eileen Cannon, the Florida judge, they're taking advantage of you. Can't you see this? And then she changed her mind and said she wouldn't delay the trial. But Jeff, and this is all speculation, but, but what Jeff said, and I thought this was interesting, was he said the Florida case is effectively delayed, even though Cannon didn't push the trial date back. She has pushed the deadlines by 2 to 3 months. So when they get to that scheduling conference in March, because they said there'd be a scheduling conference in March, Trump's side is going to say there is no way they're ready for a May trial. The reason Cannon didn't push the date off now is to try and keep Fani Willis from scheduling the Georgia case in May. Now, Jeff is very cynical, but I think, Jeff, that rings true to me, I have to say.
Look, it would make total sense. Let's put it that way. So, we don't have a window into Eileen Cannon's mind.
We don't know, but I just thought I'd share it because I thought, wow.
But that's a very, very plausible hypothesis.
Jeff is canny.
Let's put it that way.
Yes. Another Florida update. There's so many Florida updates. Now, this was
There's
us.
a massive flood happening at the moment.
I didn't even know that. So that's a third update. Do you want to talk about that or not?
No. I just saw it on my way in.
Fair enough. This is a third update on Florida. Do you remember in Florida we were talking about DeSantis and his chancellor for the state university system shutting down Students for Justice in Palestine?
I do remember that.
They said it was breaking the law by working with a terrorist organization, right? Now, what they meant by that was that SJP declared they were part of Hamas's movement, which is obviously rhetorical. I said that was legally dubious and that FIRE, the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, was going to take them to court. Okay, what's happened since then? They're now holding off attempts to kick SJP chapters off campus out of concerns, quote, about potential personal liability for university actors who deactivate the student-registered organisation. In other words, please don't sue.
Yep.
But what the chancellor of the state university system said is that he's going to try to compel, quote, an affirmation from the targeted SJP chapters, confirming that, quote, they reject violence, they are part of the Hamas movement, and that they will follow the law, which is slightly less bullshit, but only slightly. It's still kind of bullshit because, like, I'll read the quote from FIRE, which I 100% agree with, and they said very well. While universities can ask all student groups to commit to following the law, they cannot force them to expressly renounce a particular ideology or otherwise express views they don't actually hold. Students shouldn't be compelled to disavow certain disfavored views in exchange for funding and recognition. Compelling speech violates the First Amendment. Bang.
Yeah. There are a lot of groups that don't renounce violence. There are a lot of people still alive in the United States who have sent money to the IRA.
Good, great call. Some of them were Republican congressmen not too long ago.
Yes, yeah.
Peter King I'm talking about.
There are a lot of people who believe that there are causes that justify violence. Now, I'm certainly not associating myself with this group, but that's the first, I would have thought under like basic First Amendment stuff. You can't demand that someone renounces violence if that's not what they believe. Second thing is asking them to say that they're not part of the Hamas movement. Whether or not they think they're part of the Hamas movement is utterly irrelevant.
Yes.
They are not part of Hamas.
Clearly not.
Like, really, really not part of Hamas. I don't think Hamas would have them, to be honest.
True.
And it's just kind of, first of all, it's kind of ludicrous. Secondly, it seems designed to create the impression that Hamas is somehow active in the United States.
In Florida.
In Florida, and to be able to
getting drunk.
Tar everyone with that. So, and it does have this sort of ring of loyalty oaths and things like that. So this is ridiculous.
Can I ask you? I was just about to make a reference to when you were talking about Hamas active in Florida universities. I was going to make a reference to they're probably carrying those little red cups. Do they exist in America? Are they
red
real?
cups?
The red cups?
Of course they do.
Like when you go to college and everyone's getting drunk, are they all carrying those red cups?
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, they're known as solo cups.
They've only got one kind of cup in America. You'd think there'd be a lot more.
It's just the most widely available one. I don't know how the red cup became the default. This would be an interesting pice of history. It was one of these things that when I got to Michigan, it was just so prevalent, I just accepted it as completely natural.
Just imagine if that's how you made your fortune, by just making a cup red.
Imagining someone staring at a white cup and thinking, hang on.
Yeah. Anyway, another quick update, an auto update. This is off the union, the UAW deal. We've seen the last few weeks how unions work with the UAW. Mm-hmm. They got an 11% pay rise in the first year, then a 25% pay rise over 4 years, plus cost of living from the big three companies. But, of course, that didn't cover any of the other motor companies, who make up the majority of actual auto production in America.
Yes.
The rest of them are down south. They're not union workers. What happens? When wages go up for some people, it creates pressure on wages for everyone else.
That's right.
Which is why in the last 2 weeks, we've seen Toyota raise their wages by more than 9% next year. Honda, 11% next year. Hyundai, 25% over the next 4 years. That's how unions work.
Yes.
That's the magic of unions. And while I'm at it, also how unions work, there's a bit of a strike going on at the moment in the NEA. That's the National Education Association. It's a teachers' union.
Yes. I've eaten at their cafeteria in Washington.
Do they have red cups?
Do they have what?
Red cups.
Oh, can't remember.
Oh, okay. I'd remember. I a lot of right-wingers out there are enjoying some schadenfreude about the teachers' union. There being a strike against the teachers' union by their staff, right? And I don't think they understand how unionism is meant to work. Because the theory of unionism is not that employers are evil and so therefore they must be thwarted by the good guys.
Yeah.
It's the theory of unionism is that and to follow that through, and therefore the NEA are also evil according to their strikers, so they're huge hypocrites. Yeah. No, the theory of unionism is that it's about incentives, that people respond to incentives. Not evil people, just normal people respond to incentives. And the most pressing incentive for any business usually is to create the best product or service to stay in business with, not to look after their employees, right? And so that's why the employees, the theory of unionism is they have representation to create incentives for their employees to think about the employees as well as the products they're making and so forth. It's not about evilness. It's about human nature, that you focus on the things that you have incentives to focus on.
Now, I will say the particular version of unionism that you're talking about is often known as business unionism.
Okay.
And that is the prevailing form of unionism in the United States.
Sure.
This is unionism that is not committed to the destruction of capitalism.
Yeah.
It believes in capitalist prosperity, but it also believes in getting the best deal possible for workers.
Yeah.
There are other forms of unionism that are actually a lot more committed to the destruction of capitalism and, societal wide changes, but not these American unions, including not the NEA.
That reveals that the truth of the matter, which is the only thing I know in the world, is America. so
Very true.
Fair enough. But anyway, so there's no schadenfreude here. This is how it's meant to work. The NEA is meant to be focusing on on helping out teachers, not their staff, unless someone makes them focus on their staff, and that is another union. So the system's working as it's meant to work when there's a strike at the NEA.
I assume that cafeteria is closed then.
Yeah,
but to go back to the earlier point,
Yeah.
there were a lot of finance bros during that strike claiming that, all the non-union manufacturers are going to be the big winners from this.
Because
all the production will just go to them instead because they can do it cheaper.
And they couldn't foresee the
of course they could. Of course they couldn't foresee it. Yeah. They're too busy buying crypto.
Fair enough. Dave, next update's from you, believe it or not, even though you'll be surprised to hear that because
Okay.
we haven't planned it, but I know you want to talk about this. 14th Amendment update.
Yes. So there were two cases this week in Minnesota and Michigan that were both chucked out of court. Now, they are going to be appealed, make no mistake about it. So whether they had succeeded or whether they had failed, it's all going to end up in the Supreme Court.
Yes.
But the arguments that the judges used to dismiss them foreshadow that it's very unlikely to succeed in the Supreme Court. And these were also courts that would have been far more friendly to the whole idea than the Supreme Court is likely to be. And really, it's about there is, as far as they could see it, there is just too much ambiguity in the idea of whether Trump committed an insurrection or not. Like, I think that's the really key issue. There are also these two other areas of ambiguity about the very weird one about whether Trump is actually a federal official under that definition. And the other one I've forgotten about, but we always talk about it. But
there's many.
But anyway, all of these now. In each case, the door was actually open to this could be challenged in the future, but the basic upshot of it was not in this election, buddy.
Yeah. I was going to say, in this case, the legal logic didn't get to those merits that you describe in either case.
Yeah.
In Minnesota, we already mentioned this on Wednesday, but I'll back up on it. In Minnesota, the legal issue was simply you're in a primary. There's no qualifications.
Yes, yeah.
Anyone can be in a primary.
Yeah.
Get back to us later.
Yes, yeah.
So that was Minnesota. And then Michigan was under state law, the Secretary of State doesn't have the authority to intervene in a primary election either. So once again...
I should clarify, to the extent that those issues that I mentioned came into it was in the sense of these issues are clearly unresolved.
Yes. Very much so.
Yeah, they haven't been resolved yet. So, no, we are not kicking him off the ballot now.
Yeah, so what might happen is both Minnesota and Michigan, they may be back there in 3 or 4 months' time once the primary is over, and then we'll go around again. And then, as you say, it may well end up in Supreme Court, may not. My feeling is that everyone is going to, I keep on saying this, but I think This is what's going to happen. Every judge is going to do their absolute best to find an excuse to not rule.
Yeah.
And
totally.
And if
no Secretary of State wants anything to do with this either.
Totally. And if they're forced to rule on it,
Yeah.
then they'll find a technicality rule against it, and then that will be appealed, and then the next judge will try and find an excuse not to rule.
Yep.
And we'll keep on going on.
Yep.
But anyway, anything else you want to say about that?
No.
No? Okay. Let's get into the main content, which is obviously involving Congress. So much in Congress this week.
So much.
So why don't we start with the shutdown? The lack of shutdown.
Yep.
Mike Johnson, there's been, I want to do a little bit of background before we get into the shutdown, which is just, we've engaged in a lot of this ourselves. There's been a lot of talk over the last few weeks about how weird and religious he is. But, and he is indeed weird and religious.
Yes.
There's no doubt about either of those two aspects. I mentioned 2 weeks ago his seeming lack of a bank account. I've got an update on that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He told Politico he does have a bank account, but it doesn't pay interest. And if it doesn't pay interest, it's exempt from House disclosure rules, which is why he hasn't disclosed it.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is even weirder. Because you go, okay, why are you forgoing interest on your savings intentionally? That, to me, is very strange. And I feel like we're going to hear about this again.
To be fair.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
To be fair,
Yes.
until about 18 months ago,
Yeah.
the standard kind of interest that you were getting on savings was about 1/1,000,000 of a cent every 12 years.
Sure, but Dave,
Like-
he must have gone out of his way to pick an account that he doesn't have to disclose. Surely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm not denying
isn't,
that.
Isn't that noteworthy?
I'm not, what?
And slightly suspicious?
Maybe.
maybe
I'm just
not.
saying that, if I had been offered a choice at some point in the last, 20 years between an account that paid interest and an account that didn't,
Yeah.
I'd probably take the account that paid interest. But
probably.
It would be in the knowledge
Yeah.
that it would add up to absolute fuck all.
I got you. Sure.
So it seems to me to be an equally rational decision not to take the interest. But anyway.
Fair enough. Look,
I can't believe how much benefit of the doubt I'm giving this guy. But
yeah. Look,
But in the last 18 months.
I'm his prime defender as well.
Yeah.
But not in this.
In the
issue.
last 18 months, though, I imagine they've started paying a little bit more
Yeah, I would imagine they would have with inflation. Yeah, absolutely.
and interest rate rises.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, anyway, that's a bank account.
Okay.
And then the other weird religious thing that got talked was talked most about directly before the events of this week was Mike Johnson's porn app.
Yes.
Which there was a lot of talk about. This was the app which him and his teenage son both used what they call accountability software, where they monitor each other's phones and digital devices, and they scan for essentially porn.
Yeah.
And then they their devices send each other reports of what they've been looking at all week, right? Little sort of screen caps and stuff, right? Now, Pete, do you have any thoughts about that before I go on?
I just want to say evangelical accountability culture is very weird.
There's a lot of weird that's about this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I got to say, once again, I'm going to defend him here. Because a lot of people, I'm not saying,
look.
like a lot of people are saying, oh, that's how pervy, he wants to look at his son's porn. No, he doesn't. It's not that.
No.
It's not that. What it is it's him setting an example for his son. It's him saying, I don't think you should be looking at porn, and I'm going to practice what I preach. Look here, I don't look at porn either. We're in this together. We're helping each other out. I think that's weird. Again, I use the weird word,
Yes.
but it's not pervy or awful or immoral or skeevy or slimy.
Yeah.
It's not like that, which is what a lot of people are making out.
Yes.
I mean, I do think he's creating.
You obviously think that having a bank account that doesn't pay interest is way worse than that.
I do.
Way
actually.
more suspicious.
I think that's really suspicious. I think he's doing something dodgy. That's what I think. But I'm not talking the porn. I'm talking about in his bank account. But anyway,
I'm just trying to think of whether there are any Christian groups that have objections to interest being paid on. I'll have to look into that. There might be.
You're probably right.
Well, there certainly was traditionally a Christian objection to usury.
Yeah.
This doesn't seem like usury, but there's always someone who takes everything too far.
Sure.
So,
well, I was just going to say the porn app, even though I don't think there's anything immoral or weird or about it,
Yeah.
I do think that there's something clearly what happens when you stop your horny kid from looking at porn, which is he's going to be cultivating some real weird kink in his kid. That's all I'm saying. If you can't look at porn, you're going to be looking at lizards and mooses and shit. Like you're going to end up with a very strange perversion. His kid will be a bit pervy.
Mike, you've been warned.
That's all I'm saying. Do you have anything to say about lizard sex?
No.
No, I didn't think you would. Okay, but let's get into the serious stuff. All right, so
Oh, that wasn't the serious?
So this week they tried to pass a continuing resolution. Do you want to start this off, or do you?
No, you.
No. Okay.
You keep
I'll
going.
tell a story. You jump in whenever you want.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So people were so happy to make him out like a nutcase. They were kind of surprised that he got shit done, which I wasn't surprised by because I was saying he was a pragmatist. This is my lap of victory moment.
Well, he also announced that this is what he was going to do.
Yeah.
But he said he was going to cut a deal with the Democrats.
He did.
To keep the government open.
Yeah.
And it was widely known that he wasn't going to get punished for it in the same way that McCarthy had.
Absolutely.
So anyone who was surprised about this was not paying attention.
I agree. Now, just to give you some background, there are 12 appropriations bills that need to be passed each year, right? 12 separate bills, right? And in recent years, they've been not doing that. They've been passing omnibus bills at the last second because they always leave it to the absolute last second. They usually have continuing resolutions. They usually leave it till Christmas, till like literally Christmas Eve. They pass just one big bill, which is all 12 bills combined. But it's not meant to be like that. It's meant to be 12 individual bills. And Mike Johnson and Matt Gaetz and all those conservatives are very keen to return to what they call regular order, where it's just 12 bills again. And to be honest, I think they're right to want to do that. I think that's good. They say that passing omnibus bills means no one actually reads what they're passing, which is true. And they say that you sneak in all kinds of unnecessary pork and graft and spending that doesn't need to be there. It's snuck in there just because everyone knows that no one's reading it, and you're just bribing people to vote for the omnibus bill, which is also true. They're right. And so anyway, Kevin McCarthy passed 4 of the 12 bills. He did not do nothing. People act like he did nothing. He passed 4 of 12 bills. He had all year to pass 4 of the 12 bills. But still, in the last, month, Mike Johnson passed 3 of the 12 bills, which left 5 as of 2 weeks ago, which was when the honeymoon started to end for Mike Johnson. At the beginning of last week, 2 more bills. He tried to pass 2 more bills, and they were shut down. He didn't get the votes from the Conservatives. So the fun was kind of starting to end at that point in time. It was clear they were going to run out of time, and that's when he started talking about deals. All right. Andy Harris from Freedom Caucus had an idea that to stop the omnibus, rather than extending for a set amount of time, and especially to Christmas, you extend it past Christmas, and you have staggered deadlines. So you can't pass everything at once. At most, you could pass half in one deadline, half in the other deadline, but ideally you'd pass 6 in one and 6 in the other. And that is what Johnson tried to do. First bill extends to January 19. You seem very amused by this, Dave. First bill extends to January 19 and will include military construction, veterans affairs, transportation and housing, as well as energy department. Second extends to February 2, does the rest. Okay. Both of them, note, extend past Christmas. So you don't have that blackmailing House Reps vibe happening at the end, which Johnson said, the bill will stop the absurd holiday season omnibus tradition of massive loaded up spending bills introduced right before the Christmas recess, which once again is true. Johnson added no extras whatsoever. 0. No game playing, which I liked. No Israel funding, no Ukraine funding, no border security riders, nothing. No spending cuts, nothing. It was just a pure extension with nothing else whatsoever. And that's important because he didn't even offer the cuts that the Democrats had agreed to already under the debt ceiling bill. No, nothing. No negotiations, just continuing on. Which obviously the Republicans, that was going to piss them off because they wanted some cuts. He knew that. So he made it really, really clear to Democrats that's what he was going to do, knowing that they would support that. And that's why also people say he just did the same thing as McCarthy did before. No, he did something way, way more confrontational than McCarthy did. He knew that the Conservatives weren't going to go for it, and so he just avoided them completely. He didn't even try. He didn't even go to the Rules Committee. The Rules Committee, you're supposed to go through the Rules Committee to get a budget up, right? He just skipped them, which is why he needed 2/3 of the vote of the majority to pass it. Because you only need a majority if you go through the Rules Committee. If you don't go through the Rules Committee, you need 2/3 of a majority. He opted to do that, knowing he had the Democrats backing him up. So he really screwed over his allies to just get it done. And so that was really pragmatic.
So this was the most heroic and skillful effort to stop a speeding bus since Keanu Reeves in Speed.
Wow. Very temporary. He's bought a couple more meters of road, Dave.
Okay.
There's a long way to go yet.
Yeah. Oh, well, the movie Speed did not end with the bus stopping.
Well, that is true. That is very true. Oh, by the way, also, the other thing he did, unlike McCarthy,
Yes.
he passed it with 3 days to go. He could have negotiated. He could have bargained to try and get more for his people. He said, no, fuck
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Let's just get this through, which was also very unlike McCarthy.
Yes.
It was very straightforward. There was no subterfuge. There was no
Yeah.
deception, but he was just like, no, let's just get this done. So that's not like Keanu Reeves. Keanu Reeves, he got done, but only in the end.
Okay.
there was a lot of sin on that bus before Keanu Reeves did anything. Yeah. So see, that's basically what happened.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts so far?
I just feel like there's no one else in the world who has made the case for Mike Johnson's skill as enthusiastically as you just did.
I think it's real. I think if people aren't seeing what's in front of their face, I think he's good at his job.
Yeah.
Even though he's a novice.
I don't think his son admires him as much as you do at this point.
With good reason, I reckon. For his son. His son's there looking at lizards in the corner.
Okay.
Yeah. But look, so the gambit worked.
Yeah.
It won 336 to 95 with 2 Democrats and 93 Republicans dissenting.
Yep.
Got through the Senate 87 to 11.
Yes.
The usual suspects in the Senate were against it.
Yeah.
Mike Lee, J.D. Vance, Rand Paul,
Yeah,
Rick
of
Scott.
course.
MarkWayne Mullin, who we will be revisiting very
yes.
soon.
Yeah.
He's a new favourite of the podcast.
Yes.
Okay, what do you think this? If you have nothing else to say about the actual bill that passed, what are your thoughts about going forward? Where do you think they're at, and what like? Because there's a long way to go yet.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts about that?
I think that Mike Johnson is invincible. I mean that very seriously.
You've just gone past me.
Well, he just doesn't have to worry in the same way that McCarthy had to about getting toppled. Like there's nothing that he can do within the normal, within the normal realm of legislation that is going to get him ousted.
Maybe.
What do you think he could do that would get him nobbled?
Well, for a start, he's already promised there'll be no more extensions.
Right.
If he tries to get another extension, that ain't. I'm not saying he'll get nobbled immediately, but he's really out of tickets if he goes for another extension. And by the way, that's really on the cards. Take a guess how many. Like I'm talking at the end of January and February, right? So you think, oh, that's forever. Guess how many congressional days there is until the next deadline?
How many?
22. They got past 5 bills. And it's not just 5 bills. It's the 5 hardest bills they couldn't pass already.
That's true.
And not just that. That's the first step. They have to. No one's even talked about the Senate yet. All those bills they've already passed and the 5 bills, they have to get through the Senate.
Yeah.
The Senate's passed 3 bills as well. They're very different bills.
Of course.
Right? So if you look at what they've got to deal with, the Republicans want cuts. This is what the Conservatives want. They want cuts from the Environmental Protection Agency. They want cuts from childcare spending. They want cuts from food aid programs.
Yep.
They want cuts from green energy subsidies. They want cuts from the IRS. The Senate don't want any of those. The Senate insist on Ukraine funding.
Yes.
And humanitarian funding for Gaza. Good luck. And they also have very different ideas of what border security must pass bills they want to get through.
Yep.
They have to agree on all of them. 2 sides that are not in the mood to agree with each other much.
Yeah.
And they have 22 days to agree on that for not 1, but 12 different bills.
You know what is going to happen? Everyone's going to realise how much they miss the omnibus.
Yeah. Well, but the thing is,
everyone's going to realise there was a reason why The omnibus always came at Christmas time.
That's true.
Everyone's going to suddenly remember, we didn't just do this because we like the idea of it. We did it out of necessity.
Yeah. Yeah. But the problem is he is committed to not having an omnibus, and he's committed to having no more extensions. So when you're saying, is there anything you can do?
As an Australian university lecturer in the month of November, the number of times that I've declared no more extensions, there's never no more extensions.
Look, you may be right. I'm just saying, the answer to your question, is there anything he can do that can get himself into strife with the Conservatives? I've just named two things.
He can get into strife, but I don't think they're going to have a motion to vacate. Okay. I just don't.
I'm not saying they will.
Yeah.
I'm just saying I don't think it's impossible. Marjorie Taylor Greene is already starting to knife him. It didn't take her long. Like I got the quote from her somewhere. Where is it? Green. Oh, it's coming up. She said, I think if you're going to oust a Speaker of the House from your conference, the red line should remain the same for the next Speaker. What's the point in throwing out one Speaker if nothing changes? She said. So she's already got him lined up. Now she's just one person.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of frustration to come over the next 22 congressional days.
That's right.
Dave, I'm telling you. Okay, I'll give you one more bit of evidence that I'm saying he's not home free.
Okay.
Did you hear what happened to the first bill he tried to pass after the deal they just did yesterday? It was the Commerce, Science, Justice Spending Bill, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that they didn't pass the bill, although they didn't pass the bill. They didn't successfully pass the motion to debate the bill.
Oh.
Remember them?
Yes.
That never happened before 2023. That was what haunted Kevin McCarthy more than anything. He hated so much. Now they're doing that to Mike Johnson.
Wow.
So, yeah, the honeymoon is over, I'm telling you. As I said, I'm not saying he's definitely going to be knifed. I'm just saying I just don't think he's immune like you're suggesting. But yeah, we will see. We'll see about that.
No, you may well be right.
But,
you may well be right. Often things that I think are premised on assumptions of reasonableness that are wrong.
I'll give you that. You might be just too reasonable for these people.
Yeah.
Yes. Something else they should pass, by the way, while they're trying to pass all this other stuff, as a little side, is there is anti-shutdown legislation sitting on the table at the moment.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Bipartisan legislation as well. In the Senate, it's James Langford and Maggie Hassan. In the House, it's Jody Arrington and Jimmy Panetta. And it's based on a bunch of state laws because there's heaps of states where you can't have a shutdown.
Yes. Yep.
A bunch of states like North Carolina, Wisconsin, Rhode Island, amongst others. It's called the Prevent Government Shutdowns Act. It says if you run out of time, instead of the government shutting down, it automatically maintains current spending levels until there's new legislation. And
Good.
You go, okay, well, what stops them just not passing a budget ever then? The answer is always one side using that as leverage if they want it just to continue on. Well, firstly, it forces both chambers to stay in session every day until a budget's passed. That's a good idea.
Yep.
It bars the use of public money to leave Washington until the budget's passed.
Wow.
That's a good idea. And it makes it very, very hard, not impossible, but very hard to pass any other legislation until the budget is passed.
Right.
So I reckon that's a brilliant piece of legislation. They
Yeah.
should pass that.
They should.
Yeah. So I'll just throw that.
Pass it.
Yeah. Do you have anything else to say about shutdowns related or Mike Johnson or his porn or lizards?
Well, I mean, maybe everything you've described is like, this is what you can get done when you're not concentrating on porn.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe it's an inspiration.
Maybe the problem with all this gridlock that we've had over the last 20 years, which, by the way, coincides with the advent of internet porn.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not because of all the things we've been talking about, like polarization or negative affect.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because Ted Cruz is actually a lot more representative of Congress than we thought.
And who is the person who is most associated with congressional dysfunction at the moment?
Ted Cruz.
Oh, Matt Gaetz.
Matt Gaetz,
How much porn does that guy look at? Honestly, as much as he's only on the camera probably 5 to 6 minutes a day.
Yes.
And I would not be surprised if he has a little phone just past the camera looking at porn, even as he does interviews.
Yeah.
I reckon it's 24 hours a day for Matt Gaetz.
There you go.
There's something to that. There's something to that. More congressional hijinks. Tuberville. Everyone is getting sick of Tommy Tuberville's hold. They really are. Dave's getting sick of him talking about it.
Congress has finally got to the point where college football fans were with him 15 years ago.
Yes. Like he's got, for those who are very new to PEP and very new to American politics, Tommy Tuberville's got a hold on military appointments and promotions. He's had it all year because he objects to the fact that the military not pay for abortions, they pay for travel to get an abortion.
Yes.
And accommodation when you get an abortion. That's what they pay for.
Yes. And
there have been, or at least as of, like after that policy being in place for like 6 months, there'd been like literally 13 people that had taken advantage of it. And Tommy Tuberville is very exercised by that. He feels that it's illegal because there is a law that says that they're not supposed to pay for abortions.
Yes.
Even though they don't pay for abortions, they pay for travel and they pay for accommodation. I happen to agree with him.
Yes.
I think if it went to the Supreme Court, I think his side would win.
Yes.
Which is why I wonder why he hasn't bothered to take it to the courts rather than hold up the entire military for the last 12 friggin' months. Anyway, that's what they're doing. Now, even Republicans are starting to have a go at him, like Dan Sullivan and Joni Ernst. Ernst is particularly annoyed that Tuberville originally said the hold was until they took he originally said it was that he would keep the hold until they took a vote on the abortion rule. Then Schumer offered him a vote on the abortion rule. He changed his mind and said he'd keep the hold until it was actually defunded. Ernst says, quote, "I do not respect men who do not honor their word." But we've gotten to the point where now the Rules Committee, courtesy of all people, Kirsten Sinema, have come up with a way of getting around it, but you need 60 votes to get around it.
Yes.
And the Republicans, as sick as they are of it, are refusing to vote on the record to end it. Mitch McConnell said he does not support Tuberville's holds, but he voted against the resolution in the Rules Committee because he said productive discussions about reaching a deal with Tuberville are ongoing. And I'm of the mind that we ought to allow them to continue. He said he would oppose the resolution at this particular moment, but he reserved the option of supporting the resolution later this year. That's where we're at.
Yeah.
So still, not a single Republican is prepared to go on the record to vote against it, even though they keep on sledging him in public.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just want to go back to something.
Yes, please.
Because we're very big on not defaming anyone on PEP. And we do need to make it clear.
Is this about lizards?
No.
Okay.
We do need to make it clear that there hasn't ever been an incident of a member of Congress actually looking at porn on the floor of Congress that I'm aware of.
I know where this is going.
But for those of you who are fans of the future show Planet Britain, you might remember this incident from last year. Disgraced Tory MP Neil Parish, who resigned his seat on Saturday, this is May last year, after admitting he had twice watched pornography in the House of Commons chamber, appeared to have committed a criminal offence that carried a maximum 2-year prison sentence. Parish, who had represented the safe seat West Country of Tiverton and Honiton since 2010, said that on the first occasion he watched porn on his mobile phone next to other MPs, including women, he had done so by accident. But in an emotional interview announcing his resignation, in which he came close to breaking down in tears, he said his biggest crime was to have done so again, this time deliberately and in what he called a moment of madness while waiting to vote. Explaining what had happened, Parish, who also runs a farm, told BBC Politics Southwest, the situation was that, funnily enough, it was tractors I was looking at. I did get into another website that had a very similar name and I watched for a bit which I shouldn't have done. But my biggest crime, is that on another occasion I went in a second time while waiting to vote.
What was that place called again? Tiverton,
Huntington and Tiverton.
Right, okay.
Or Tiverton and Huntington.
When Planet Britain exists, there's going to be a lot of those kinds of names.
Yes.
Yes. I went to uni with a guy whose last name was Edgerton Warburton.
I remember him.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, that's I like those names, those British names. I'm glad that you backed over that one like a tractor, like a porn tractor.
Yes, yeah. I'm sure some of you will remember. My friend Nick, he'll definitely remember that one. But anyway, that's the future of Planet Britain.
For those who are wondering,
Yes.
Back to Tuberville for a second.
Yeah.
Why don't they just wait till he's not there and then pass the motion? Because
Sneaky.
Because the way it works is that someone, you need to physically object every time someone tries to pass the motion.
Yes.
Someone raises the motion, they go, does anyone object? And then they go, I've got to hold. So if he's not there, they can just get through.
That's right.
So why don't they just do that? You might be wondering.
Yes.
The answer is very frustrating.
What's that?
It turns out that in the Senate, they file their request in advance in order to alert the staff of every senator in case the senators want to be there to block it. So in 2018, for example, Senator Richard Burr made a request on the floor to advance one of his priorities, knowing it was going to be blocked. But when he saw that the person who he thought was going to be there to block his request hadn't turned up for whatever reason,
right,
he ended up objecting to his own request.
Wow.
In the spirit of comity of the Senate.
That's excellent.
So
they can't... He'll know when they're going to vote.
Yeah.
So they've got to stop him from getting there.
Yeah, so they tackle him, that's all.
No. Now that the Senate has its new dress code, someone's just got to steal his tie or something.
But no, he can do the 1 foot in, 1 foot out thing that Fetterman does. That still exists.
Right.
Yeah, then you don't have to be in the dress code.
Okay.
Someone needs to actually, like they need to kidnap him. They need to be hijinks. Chris Murphy said, someone asked him about being sneaky.
Yep.
And he said, if you started doing that, then everybody would do it. Mm-hmm. It's one of the ways we keep collegiality and we don't become the House of Representatives, he says.
Oh.
Take that, House of Representatives. Yeah, it's pretty stupid.
Yeah.
The holder's not in the Constitution.
You do sometimes get the impression that the two houses just despise each other.
I think everyone despises each other.
More than they despise the other party.
Yeah.
Especially in the Senate. It often does appear that Senate Democrats and Republicans feel closer to each other than they do to the House.
Hold that thought about who despises who.
Yes.
The very next topic we're about to discuss right now is the Congressional Fight Club.
Okay.
There's a lot of despising going on. Yeah. Before you do, I just make the point that there is a different way to deal with this. There are 65,000 confirmations per Congress at the moment. Most of them are military appointments and promotions. They don't need to be done like this.
No.
It doesn't need to happen this way. You can let the defense secretary do it and say, if we have any objections, we'll then come in over the top.
Yeah.
That's what you could do. That's what they should do.
Yes.
But anyway, Congressional Fight Club. Can we start with Kevin McCarthy?
We can.
Do you want to tell the story about this one?
Kevin McCarthy planted his elbow in someone's back on the way past him. And he claimed he was just, passing him in a very crowded corridor. Sorry, I'm completely blanking on the name of it. It was one
Tim Burchett.
Tim Burchett. It was one of the 8 who voted against him.
Yeah. He's quite an old man as well, by the way.
Yes, yeah. And Tim Burchett ran after him in this crowded corridor, accusing him of assault and cowardice.
He did, and call him a jerk.
Called him a jerk.
And a pathetic man.
A jerk and a pathetic man.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, planting your elbow in somebody's back, I can't think of any sport where that is legal. In Australian rules football, you're allowed to plant your foot in somebody's back.
Yeah, or your elbow in their side.
Yes.
But not in their back.
This is one of the things I love about Australian rules is the kind of the inconsistency in physical assault. You can jump on someone's back.
Yeah.
But
you can jump on their head.
Yeah, but you give them like the mildest shove with the hands in the back, and it's like you violated the Geneva Convention.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's correct. Yes.
Even in, American football where all kinds of contact is allowed, when it starts to come to that kind of contact, that's a big no-no. You can't elbow someone in the back, I believe, in American football. So very unsportsmanlike move from Kevin.
What about chess? You could probably elbow someone in the back in chess, couldn't you? I bet they don't have a rule that you can't.
They probably don't. Yeah, rules have been a big issue in international chess tournaments.
I'm just trying to come up with a job for Kevin McCarthy. Yeah, he needs one. He's definitely not long for the Congress. So Kevin McCarthy denies that he did this.
Yes, he said he was just passing.
Yeah,
but
so you disbelieve him?
Throwing an elbow in someone's back is pretty hard to do accidentally. Now, I don't have a lot of experience in this, so I don't know, but I do have a lot of experience passing people in crowded corridor situations.
Yeah.
And I have never would have come close to elbowing somebody in the back.
Yeah, it's not something I've ever done.
No.
Unfortunately for Kevin, it's something he's done more than once.
Is it?
Yes, which is part of the reason I don't believe him.
Okay.
He has a bit of form. Adam Kinzinger, in his book, this is not something new. This is in his book that he wrote a year ago.
Yeah.
Wrote twice Kevin McCarthy.
Yep.
What he described as shoulder checked him in the back when he wasn't looking in Congress, like in the halls of Congress.
Wow.
So this seems to be something Kevin McCarthy likes to do. Like it's basically describing the same thing.
That really is jerk behavior.
Yeah, and earlier this year, this is not exactly the same thing, but it just suggests that Kevin McCarthy might be a little bit of a bitch. After the Republicans censured Adam Schiff, Eric Swalwell in Congress, during his speech, he called Kevin McCarthy a weak man. And then the next day, Kevin McCarthy apparently buttonholed him in the corridor and said, if you ever say something like that to me again, I'm going to kick the shit out of you.
Oh, my God.
So that's Kevin McCarthy for you.
But that is weak man behavior.
It is, ironically.
Yes.
Yes. Way to confirm it, Kev.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I've got my doubts about Kevin McCarthy's denials. I have to say, also the way he denied it in the worst possible way, which was he was trying to act all cool and calm in the press gaggle afterwards, and when they were talking about it, he said, "Oh, if I hit somebody, they'd know it. If I kidney punch someone, they'd be on the ground." So you go, the fact that he's talking about how big a man he is while he's denying it, you go, yeah, okay. You definitely did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he sounds a lot like somebody insisting to a bank that his credit is good.
Yeah, he's no interest bank. A little aside as well on this. Like Tim Burchett's been pretty cool about it. Like he's done a couple of interviews going, I don't know what he was doing, but you can expect him to vent a little bit about that. But he doesn't want to go on with it. Like he said, like the quote from him is, these ethics complaints go on for years.
Yep.
He's going to be Kevin McCarthy is going to be out of here after Christmas. Like I said, he has $17 million in a security detail, and he'll still be a bully. He says that he prays for Kevin McCarthy and hopes he finds happiness in his life, which is lovely, isn't it? He's like Tim Scott. By contrast, someone who isn't quite so lovely is Matt Gaetz, who has lodged an ethics complaint on Tim Burchett's behalf.
Oh, my God.
It has come to my attention, says Matt Gaetz in his complaint, that this morning, following the meeting of the House Republican Conference, Representative Kevin McCarthy assaulted Representative Tim Burchett in the hallways of Capitol Complex. This incident deserves immediate and swift investigation by the Ethics Committee. While Rep. Burchett is within his rights to decline to press charges against Rep. McCarthy, your committee does have a duty to investigate breaches of the binding code of official conduct, whose first rule is that a member shall behave at all times in a manner that shall reflect credibly on the House. There is substantial evidence that Rep. McCarthy breached this duty. Matt Gaetz. He's such a troll.
Don't even know what to say.
He's such a troll
anymore.
I bet he was looking at porn when he filled that form out. Anyway. I've got an interesting aside about this, by the way, later on.
Yeah.
Which I'm not going to say now. I'm going to save it for slightly later on.
Okay.
Do you have anything else to say about Kevin McCarthy?
No, I do not.
Actually, hey, do you have any can you mind read Kevin McCarthy to work out what's going on other than just he's a jerk? Like, do you have any thoughts? Like, why would someone do that? It's quite bizarre behavior.
Because he's a weak man.
Yeah, okay, well, that's fair enough. My theory is this. I do have a theory on this, which is that Kevin McCarthy, after he got sacked, he continued to clearly be campaigning behind the scenes to get brought back.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
In fact, the day that
came close to happening.
Yeah, I was going to say, the day that Mike Johnson was elected, his people were out there suggesting Kevin McCarthy, which suggests it was a plan.
If Mike Johnson hadn't been elected, it would have been McCarthy.
Totally, right? And so during our entire period, he was saying, I don't want to resign. I've got lots of things to do. There's so many things I have to achieve yet. Because he's achieved so much so far.
Yeah.
But then last week he started saying all of a sudden, No, I think I'm going to go. I think I've had enough. And so I reckon that I might not be the only person who thinks Mike Johnson has some potential. I think Kevin McCarthy suddenly realized, fuck, I'm never
coming back.
I'm never going to be the speaker again. And so then he gave up. And I think he is right now, he's in the process of just being filthy. He's finally realized he's not going to be speaker anymore. He's pissed off. And I think that's the reason for this. I think this is a signature. This is signifying he's finally given up, I think.
Right.
And so he's just going out with an elbow. Anyway. So, okay, so nothing else on Kevin McCarthy?
No.
All right, here's the main event. MarkWayne Mullin, there we go.
That was the undercard.
Okay,
now,
Dave,
welcome to the Octagon.
talk to us about the history of MarkWayne Mullin, shall we?
MarkWayne Mullin.
Yeah.
So while I was reading in astonishment yesterday about MarkWayne Mullin challenging the leader of the Teamsters to a brawl in a Senate hearing, I kept thinking, MarkWayne Mullin, when was he in the news? He was in the news recently. When was it? It wasn't exactly recently. It was 2 years ago. But if you were listening to Pep 2 years ago, you'd be familiar with this. This was the then member of the House of Representatives who actually flew to Dushanbe in Tajikistan with the intent of entering Afghanistan to carry out a one-man solo rescue mission of an American who was trapped there. Now, you can look at this as a rather ridiculous stunt, but even if it was, he seems to have taken it quite a long way.
Yeah.
Like, I would have thought that most people who were doing this as a stunt would not have got all the way to Dushanbe. Yeah. And he went to Dushanbe after he was initially turned back was it Ankara or somewhere like that?
I have no idea.
Yeah, he made 2 attempts to actually get into Afghanistan before, like, I'm just trying to imagine the representative of the State Department talking to him at this point. I imagine he would have been like, we wouldn't have been yelling at him. He wouldn't have been saying, like, get your ass back here.
No, you don't yell at MarkWayne Mullin.
It would have been a very slow and reasonable conversation. Yeah. Because this is the thing about MarkWayne Mullin. He does actually seem to be serious about having physical altercations.
Oh, yes. He's definitely serious about that.
Like, name the time, name the place, whether it's Afghanistan or Oklahoma or a Senate hearing, MarkWayne Mullin is up for it.
Yeah.
Yes. Just a little bit more background about MarkWayne Mullin.
So, can I just ask a question about Dushanbe?
Yeah.
When he was in Dushanbe, was he trying to awkwardly take off his ring at the time? That's what I want to know.
That's how the State Department knew he was serious.
Yeah, okay, go on. Yep.
Yes. So he was a member of the House of Representatives until quite recently. He won special election to take Jim Inhofe's seat in Oklahoma. He's a member of the Cherokee Nation, so he's one of 4 Native Americans currently in Congress, and he is the only member of the Senate who doesn't have at least a bachelor's degree. So he's the only last non-college educated member of the Senate. He has an associate's degree. He was attending college, but he dropped out, I think, when his father died in order to take over the family plumbing business. So he does have a genuinely different background from most other people in the Senate. Okay. And quite pertinently to this as well, he's also been a mixed martial arts fighter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Although not a very good one, apparently.
Well, it's a tough thing to do.
Yeah. Look, I'm not saying I'm going to take him on.
Yeah.
Although he wants to take me on. He wants to take everyone on.
Yeah.
But apparently, the people he doesn't want to take on are other MMA fighters.
Right.
He wants to take on everyone else who's not an MMA fighter.
Yeah. Including the entire Taliban. Yes. But yes. But okay, so that's the background to MarkWayne Mullin.
Yes.
Okay. Do you want me to go on?
No. Well, I have everything to do with Sean O'Brien. I have the whole history of Sean O'Brien and MarkWayne Mullin.
Okay.
If you have other stuff on MarkWayne Mullin, just go for it.
I don't actually have anything more on MarkWayne Mullin. Okay. I just actually want to give a bit of background on the Teamsters.
Go for it.
Who are led by Sean O'Brien. Yeah. So this is the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. It is one of the best known and most successful unions in the United States. So I think according to its own numbers, it has about 1.4 million people now. Even though it started out as like a union of horse and cart drivers, which became a union of truck drivers, it in the 20th century had a very aggressively expansionist policy, encompassing bringing all kinds of other service industries under its umbrella because it believed the best way to get the best deal for its workers was by having as many people as possible. In many ways, it was the consummate business union. Now, it did definitely get a reputation for thuggery. A big part of that was because it was poaching people from other unions. And so often it had to use violence to basically enforce its demarcation lines. The other thing was that two early leaders, or two mid-century leaders, Dave Beck and Jimmy Hoffa, more famously, basically openly cultivated relationships with organised crime. Jimmy Hoffa in particular was not shy about this because once again, he saw it as the best way of getting the best deal for your workers. If you know that you've got mafia muscle backing you up, that is going to, that's going to accentuate some of your demands. Now, some of the Teamsters' reputation for thuggery is, apart from that, it's really just based on the fact that they were successful. A lot of businesses just hated the fact that they were able to get their, get their members the deals that they did. Because in terms of the deals that they got for their members, they're one of the most successful unions in American history. But, of course, the other part of this is that Dave Beck and Jimmy Hoffa were both involved in rather grotesque levels of personal enrichment, which sent Dave Beck to jail for many years, sent Jimmy Hoffa to jail for 13 years, cut a deal with Richard Nixon 5 years into his term. Incidentally, the Teamsters then endorsed Richard Nixon in the 1972 election. One of the conditions of that was that Jimmy Hoffa not run a union again until 1980. Yep. But he was trying to get himself back into the Teamsters leadership, which was cut short in 1975 when he disappeared and was never seen again because apparently some of his former mafia colleagues were not thrilled at the prospect of having him back. This is Jimmy Hoffa. Where did Jimmy Hoffa end up? Is an object of obsession in Michigan because this is where he was from. I remember in 2006, I think it was the Detroit Free Press, published the FBI files that were on him, which pretty unanimously concluded he'd been murdered, but nobody knows where he ended up. One of the theories was that he ended up buried under Giants Stadium in New Jersey because it was the New Jersey crowd that were not happy with him coming back. But despite all of that, he's actually quite fondly remembered in the Teamsters because of the kinds of deals that he got for the Teamsters. So his son, James Hoffa, I think also became the president of the Teamsters. So if you hear in some of the video that's about to be played, the mention of the name Hoffa, we're not talking about Jimmy Hoffa, who is still buried somewhere. We're actually, I believe we are, we're talking about his son. But anyway, this is just all to get to the fact that if you look at the way that Sean O'Brien presents himself and you listen to some of the things that MarkWayne Mullin says about him, like that when he got elected, he said, we want to bring the mob mentality back to the Teamsters. This isn't just MarkWayne Mullin being defamatory. This is actually part of the whole kind of strategy of the Teamsters, was wanting to present themselves in a certain way. Like, we are going to get a very good deal, for our members. And if that does occasionally involve the deployment of violence, then so be it.
As good background.
Yes.
Okay, now I'm going to take you on quite a journey here.
Okay.
Because it's awesome. But, on Wednesday on Plain America, we actually had a debate behind the scenes because this story broke while we were just about to film.
Right.
And John was like, we have to show this footage.
Yes.
Which makes sense.
Yes. Yeah.
The Wednesday show is meant to be the entertaining show. This is incredibly entertaining footage. And I was going, I don't want to do it because this minute is great footage. Yes. But you just know there's a whole story behind this. And I prefer on Friday do this properly.
Yeah.
And spend 15 minutes telling the whole story. because I bet it's a great story.
Yeah.
And John said, yeah, nah, let's just get the clip out.
Okay.
And I go, fine. But then I start preparing for Friday, and I realized, no, this is too long even for the Friday show.
Wow.
So now you're going to hear the story. This is the thing.
This is what you get on PEP.
That's what you get. So we're going back to April.
Okay.
All right. It all started in April. Bernie Sanders calls Sean O'Brien, president of the Teamsters, to testify before the Labor Committee. Okay, so actually a HELP committee is health, education, Labor.
Yeah.
Whatever. MarkWayne Mullin is on the Labor Committee. He runs his own chain of plumbers.
Yes.
And it's a non-union shop.
Yep.
Okay, so he's not a big fan of the Teamsters generally. And he wanted to have a go at O'Brien, but O'Brien was not taking it. And so we see this result.
You talk about CEOs that are making all this money, and what do you make, Mr. O'Brien?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question.
Yeah, I know what you make, because in 2019, your salary was, what is this, $193,000? I'm sure you got some pay raises since then.
Yeah, when I was a
And the average UPS driver, the feeder driver, makes $35,000 a year. And what do you bring?
That's inaccurate.
Hold on a second.
That's inaccurate. State facts.
I've got it right here.
State facts. That's inaccurate.
The average UPS feeder driver makes $35,000. If you don't know your facts, then maybe you should.
I know them because I negotiate the contract.
So I say one thing to you. What do you bring for that salary?
What do I bring?
Yeah. What job have you committed, or have you started? What job have you created? One job, other than sucking the paycheck out of somebody else that you want to say that you're trying to provide because you're forcing them to pay dues?
No, we don't force them.
Senator, you've asked the question.
You're out of line.
Let him answer
Actually, I
the question.
haven't, and don't tell me I'm out of line.
You are out of line.
Don't tell me I'm out of line.
Well, you frame.
Don't tell me. I'm making a statement.
You frame the statement.
You need to
Tough
shut your
guy.
mouth because you don't know
You're
what you're
gonna tell me to shut
talking
my
about.
mouth?
Yes, I did.
Hold it.
Yeah.
Hold it.
Yes,
Tough guy. I'm not
Senator,
afraid of physical.
Senator,
You don't have
hold
to be,
it.
but don't sit there and tell me I'm out of line.
Senator, you made a statement. You asked the question.
I didn't ask a question.
You did.
I answered the question.
You asked the question about how
Well, it was
much money.
rhetorical.
Let him answer.
It was a rhetorical
Well,
question.
you may think it's rhetorical.
It was
Sounded to me
rhetorical.
like a question. Let him answer the question.
I'm not yielding my time to him. So if you're going to let me keep my time, that's fine.
You'll have your time. Let him. You ask
Your
a question. He has a right to answer that.
As far as my salary goes, my salary, if you follow me around, I actually look at this building. I bet you I work more hours than you do. Twice as many hours.
That's impossible. But
no, that's true.
Sir, you don't know what hard work is. You want to follow my schedule?
Secondly, I'll do it in a minute.
We
hold greedy CEOs like yourself accountable.
You call me a greedy CEO?
Oh, yeah, you are. You want to attack my salary, I'll attack yours. What did you make? What did you make when you owned your company?
When I made my company, I kept my salary down at about $50,000 a year because I invested every penny into it.
Okay. All right. You mean you hid money?
No, I didn't hide. Oh, hold on a second.
Okay, go.
He said that's out of line. You said I was out of line.
We're even.
We're not even. We're not even close to being even. You think it's smart? You think you're funny?
No,
you're not.
You think you're funny.
No, I never said. Did I smile?
You frame your opening statement.
Hold on.
You frame your opening statement saying you're a
Senator,
tough guy.
continue. Senator, please continue your
behavior,
statements.
but sir, I think it's great that you're doing this because
Me too.
this shows their behavior on how they try to come in and demonize a shop.
No, it's
and they
just-
say about intimidation, and it's not about intimidation.
This
It's
may
not the
show your
employees
behavior
anymore.
here. But stay on the issue, please.
Okay, that's enough.
Yes.
Okay, so as you can see,
Yeah.
Sean O'Brien, big smart ass.
Yes.
No doubt about that. MarkWayne Mullin, dickhead.
Yes.
Just Bernie Sanders, very funny.
Yes. I love the way he rips his mask off. To make the point. So just a couple of other things
Yeah.
I've noticed from that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. MarkWayne Mullin is clearly hallucinating on his own job creator fumes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
He really, really loves this.
Yes.
And somebody who is in that state of self-righteousness is incredibly easy to antagonize, which is something that Sean O'Brien, realizes. I'm pretty sure when he called him a greedy CEO, did you know, I think he actually went to take his wedding ring off.
I didn't notice that.
I think. And I think he might have immediately thought better of it. I think like the hand closed over and then he sort of immediately...
That reflex action.
Maybe it's not punching time quite yet.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, but that time was coming soon.
Yes.
So, yes. Now, that exchange there, that made news at the time.
Yes.
Not much news, but it made some news,
Yes.
right? Bernie fans weren't impressed with Mullin's claim that he paid himself $50,000 a year. He's building that business. They looked into him.
Yep.
It turned out that in 2013, he was actually reported as paying himself $600,000 a year for his company,
Wow.
which was an ethics problem because congresspeople aren't supposed to have more than $27,000 of outside income. So much for $50,000. And as you said, Sean O'Brien did immediately notice that he'd be easy to antagonize, and he tweeted
Yes.
straight after that hearing, for the record, Senator Mullin saw his reported assets balloon from a range of $7.3 million to $29.9 million at the end of 2020 to a range of $31.6 million to $75.6 million. And Mullin was clearly pretty butthurt by that.
Yes.
And butthurt by the fact that Sean O'Brien was not going to get bulldozed by him.
No.
So then in June, they had another hearing.
Yes.
Not with Sean O'Brien.
No.
Just with MarkWayne Mullin and Bernie Sanders and all the rest. And MarkWayne Mullin brought Sean O'Brien up out of nowhere when Sean O'Brien wasn't there to defend himself. He thought he'd get the best of Sean O'Brien at that moment. And this is what that looked like.
The bill, however, is not about increasing the quality of an employee relationship or allowing the free market to lift millions of workers out of poverty. It's about increasing the power of union bosses, like the one that was here one time, over the union bosses for the Teamsters, O'Malley, who quoted one time saying that he wants to bring the mob mentality back to the Teamsters. That's who you're empowering, Chairman.
Okay, so he's making a reference to a hearing from 2 months earlier. He clearly harbors a grudge, and time passes differently in MarkWayne Mullin's head than it does to everyone else outside his head, right? He's making this random reference to some hearing from ages ago. And Sean O'Brien clearly saw that he's definitely living rent-free in MarkWayne Mullin's head, so he then kept on going on Twitter. And he tweeted out, "Hey, John Wayne Mullin," after he played that clip. "First off, my name's O'Brien, not O'Malley. Secondly, you should get your facts straight because every time you speak in these hearings, you're full of shit. The more you run your mouth, the more you show the American public what a moron you are." And then he followed up with, "What have you done for working people in Oklahoma, Senator Mullin? Last time I checked, your state ranks near the bottom in median wages. Sounds like you need to shut your mouth and get to work for the people of your state. They deserve action, not your phony man of the people spiel. #truth. And then he also tweeted this tweet, which I'm showing Dave now, I'm showing you all. "Greedy CEO who pretends like he's self-made, in reality just a clown and a fraud, always has been, always will be. Quit the tough guy act in these Senate hearings. You know where to find me, any place, anytime, cowboy." And then, this is important, #little man syndrome.
Oh.
Just bear that in mind for when you hear MarkWayne Mullin read this tweet out, he doesn't mention #little man syndrome. He drops that bit out. And then there's a picture here, as you can see, of MarkWayne Mullin standing during the debate on a little sort of fruit case, I guess, a little apple case or something, to make him be a little bit taller, and it's been circled with a little pink texture. This was not done by Sean O'Brien. That was sent around the internet before, and he's just appropriated it. But just making very clear that MarkWayne Mullin is short.
Yes.
With his #little man syndrome. And that got MarkWayne Mullin's attention. All right. And then MarkWayne Mullin replies. That's the first time he replied to any of these tweets.
Yep.
He replies with the tweet, "An attention-seeking union Teamster boss is trying to be punchy after our Senate hearing. Okay, I accept your challenge. MMA fight for charity of our choice. September 30th in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'll give you 3 days to accept." Now, firstly, note when you look at this tweet, and everything I'm just reading out, I'm showing people. Note, he didn't tag O'Brien, which is that's Twitter for gutless.
Yes.
Right? Obviously, O'Brien was going to find out anyway, but potentially he could have missed that tweet completely because it wasn't tagged. Interestingly, as well, you'll notice that O'Brien, while O'Brien said any place, any time,
yes,
and that is indeed a macho thing to say,
yes,
he'd never explicitly said, let's have a physical confrontation.
That's true.
Certainly not, let's have a cage fight.
Yes.
Right? I mean, there are a million. If I said any place, any time to you, I'd be meaning let's have a debate. Or let's have it out or something. You know, let's like I wouldn't be saying if I said any place, any time to you, it wouldn't mean let's have a punch on.
No.
Like there are different interpretations.
Yes.
At the very least, you would try and sort out what they meant by that before you booked a cage fight.
Yes,
Like MarkWayne Mullin had already done.
Yeah.
So he's very, very keen to have cage fights, MarkWayne Mullin. That is very, very obvious. Now, admittedly, I'm not a moronic Neanderthal, so I think differently to MarkWayne Mullin. But presumably O'Brien is of the same view. And the reason I say that is because he didn't even reply to Mullin. He just ignored him at the time. And the date of their fight came and went. It was September 30.
Yes.
Gone. That then takes us to this week when O'Brien was invited back for another hearing by Bernie Sanders.
Yes.
And it was very obvious that MarkWayne Mullin was not interested in a debate.
No.
But challenging O'Brien to another cage fight next year, which once again, he had already booked the date. And he was very, very, like, you've only seen the minute. Most of you people, you might not have seen this at all. But, but for those who've seen it, you've probably only seen the minute where you just see him getting up and adjusting his belt and his ring and all the rest of it. You don't know that he spent 6 minutes trying to goad O'Brien into having his cage fight in April next year. And a date that he had booked. He was so keen to cage fight with O'Brien, right? I mean, not even an arm wrestle. I mean, it could have been any number of... Why a cage fight? Who cage fights other than MMA fighters? Like other people, even a boxing match.
Yes.
Even like some other... If you need to have a physical confrontation, there's so many you could have. Why would you think the natural confrontation method is a cage fight? Especially given O'Brien, if you look at him, is probably 60. He's not young.
No.
Who challenges 60-year-olds to cage fights? MarkWayne Mullin does. That's who. Anyway, consider this your toilet break because it goes for 6 minutes.
Yes.
Now, you can just skip forward 6 minutes if you want. For those listening to it, I think it still holds audio-wise, even without seeing it. It's more entertaining if you're watching, but I think it holds to just listen to it because it's mostly audio. I think it's worth playing in full, though, because, number one, you won't have seen this full clip. It's hard to find.
Yeah.
You won't have seen this full clip, almost certainly.
Yeah.
And I think you need to hear the full 6 minutes to appreciate just how determined Mullin is to set up this fight and how bad a case of hashtag little man syndrome this guy has. Do you have anything to say before we play it, Dave?
No, just
Let's
play
go.
it. Yeah.
Track the union dues, it's actually higher. Non-union employees are getting paid by roughly 1% to 2%, which is exactly what union dues are, is 1% to 2% of their salary. So I just wanted to set the record straight on that, and that's coming from statistics, all right? Now, let's talk about Mr. O'Brien himself, his behavior. As everybody knows, and it's here, and the last time, him and I kind of had a back and forth. Appreciate your demeanor today. It's quite different. But after you left here, you got pretty excited about the keyboard. In fact, you tweeted at me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And let me read what the last one said. It said, greedy CEO who pretends like he's self-made. Sir, I wish you was in the truck with me when I was building my plumbing company. Myself and my wife was running the office because I sure remember working pretty hard and long hours. Pretends like he's self-made. What a clown. Fraud. Always has been, always will be. Quit the tough guy act in these Senate hearings. You know where to find me. Any place, anytime, cowboy. Sir, this is a time, this is a place. If you want to run your mouth, we can be two consenting adults. We can finish it here.
Okay, that's fine. Perfect.
You want to do it now?
I'd love to do it right now.
Well, stand your butt up then.
You stand your butt up.
Oh, hold on.
Big guy.
Oh, stop it.
Is that your solution every
Hold it. No, sit down. Sit down. Okay. You know, you're a United States Senator. Sit down.
Active.
Oh, okay.
Sit down, please.
All right.
Can I respond? Mr.
Hold it. If
Hold
we
on.
can, no,
This is
I have
what
the
he
mic.
said.
I'm sorry.
This is
hold
what
it.
he said.
You'll have your time.
Okay.
Can I respond?
Oh, no, you can't. This is a hearing. And God knows the American people have enough contempt for Congress. Let's not
I don't
make
like
it worse.
thugs and bullies.
You have,
And that's
you
what-
have
I don't like you because you
Hold
just
it.
described yourself.
Hold it. You have the mic.
Yeah.
You have time.
All right.
Make your statement.
Then let's do this, because I did challenge you and I accepted your challenge, and you went quiet.
No, I didn't go quiet. You challenged me to a cage match, acting like a 12-year-old schoolyard bully.
Excuse me. Hold it. No, excuse me.
I will say exactly.
Senator Mullin, I have the mic. You have questions on any economic issues, anything that said, go for it. We're not here to talk about physical abuse.
You brought.
We're not talking about. Of course, I did.
And let me show you his hearing, because I want to expose this thug to who he is. And
You're not pointing at me. That's disrespectful.
All right.
I don't care about respecting you at all.
I don't respect you at all.
So
All right, hold it. No.
You're one of 100 of the most elite people.
Please.
Act it.
Please. All right. This is excuse me. This is a hearing to discuss economic issues. All right. If you have questions for Mr. O'Brien or anybody else on what he has said, go for it. But we're not here to talk about fights or anything else.
I'm quoting exactly what he said.
You can say what you want.
This is your witness you brought.
My witness.
I'm exposing him.
You can
as a
talk
person
anything
who
you
he
want.
is. So in 2013, O'Brien was suspended by the Teamsters for intimidating your own members. In 2014, you were part of, what would you say, organizing the harassment, intimidation of the Top Shelf crew.
Chef, not chef.
Top Chef. Okay, and then and I think in the reports they said sexual, racist, and homophobic slurs and death threats. 14 tires were sliced, and 5 Teamsters were arrested. And you said, "Well, I had nothing to do with it." But however, in that same statement, you said, "But if I get called to testify, I'll plead the Fifth." This is a witness you brought in here. In 2017, you were removed as lead negotiator by then President Hoffa for UPS for your actions. And then in 22, when this guy was elected, what he said after he got elected was he wanted to bring the mob mentality back to the Teamsters. This is your guy.
And you're obviously going to give him a chance to respond to your questions.
Absolutely, because this is my question. Because you called me out. I didn't call you out.
Yeah, you did.
You said anytime, any place.
Let's get the record straight.
Miss, hold it. No.
Hold on.
Senator Mullin, do you have a question for the witness?
Yeah.
Okay, let's hear it.
So, anytime, any place.
No, that's
April is a charity event.
No, that's not.
No, it's sir, he said it, and this is my
He is
time.
here to
You
tell.
set parameters on what the questions can or cannot be asked, and I'll ask.
No, we're not going to be talking about physical confrontation.
Oh, this is about charity, for a union charity, because this is for firefighters. And
do you have a question on his testimony?
Grow up, will you please?
You have a
question
on his. Let's not be.
You said it.
You're an embarrassment.
You said it, and I'm just simply answering it.
You reached out to
hold it. Senator Mullin, you made some charges. Mr. O'Brien, do you want to respond to
go
the
ahead,
question?
please.
Yeah, I mean, look, the reality of it is,
Accept my challenge,
Mr. Mullin, tough guy.
Hold it. Answer the questions.
All right, you're one. He made a lot of statements, right? And his statements are fiction at best.
Fiction, I read them.
Can he
What?
Answer the question, please.
I can't understand him, to be honest with you.
All right.
He rambles so much. What was your question, actually?
You said I made a lot of statements.
No, but what's your question? I don't understand your question. Could you repeat it?
You said anytime, any place.
What's your question?
Accept the challenge.
What challenge?
You said anytime, any place. I'm accepting yours, so why don't you come
What
back?
challenge? What challenge are you talking
April
about?
30th. How about we do it for a charity at the Smoking Guns in Tulsa, Oklahoma?
No, we're not going to be
what was the
talking about
challenge?
physical confrontations here.
You want to fight me?
What'd you say about anytime, any place?
Let's have coffee, discuss our differences.
That's what you said.
Yeah, that's right, exactly.
All right, well, let's sit down and have coffee.
Let's do it.
All right.
I'd love to.
It's funny how you're backing out.
Okay.
I don't back on anything.
You did.
You're the one. You're a 100.
Senator,
should be the most influential people in this country making changes.
Senator
You're focused on.
Okay.
You're
Thank
focused
you.
on
Thank
debate
you.
that's not even
Fine.
relevant.
Texting
You're an
me and they got
embarrassment. You're
silent.
an embarrassment.
They went silence after
You're an embarrassment to the state of
This
Oklahoma.
hearing is about the condition of the working class in America.
That's what we're talking about.
You're the biggest thug here.
You brought him in.
All right,
You're the biggest thug. Even your colleagues call you.
Why
a
you
joke.
do what you're doing, Senator Hassan?
Thank you very much, Mr.
Senator
Chair.
Hassan, you got a
Senator
question?
Mullin, please yield. I've been recognized by the chair.
Act accordingly.
The
now-
microphone is yours.
Chairman.
Okay, Dave, what are your thoughts?
So many thoughts. You're a United States Senator is one of the best quotes in the history of the congressional record.
Bernie was so good. I mean,
He really
He
was.
followed up with the no wonder people have enough contempt for Congress already.
Yes.
It's so good.
Yes, it really is. Look, MarkWayne Mullin, I will say this. His beard actually looks natural. I mean, he's not one of those baby-faced right-wingers who has grown a beard in a desperate attempt to look more serious.
Like Charlie Kirk will be in about 6 months' time.
Yes, yeah. So, like, you know, you've got to give him that. As I said, he is serious about physical altercations.
Oh, he's very serious. It's the only thing he's serious about.
Yes, yeah. But this is unfortunately one of the many things that O'Brien has taken advantage of. Like, and you know, I despise internet discourse, but I can observe that basically by the laws of the internet, which is really where all this is playing out, O'Brien has got the better of him at every single turn. You know, on the basic kind of you want to minimize your expenditure of energy to cause maximum expenditure of energy on the other side.
Yeah.
O'Brien has repeatedly won that battle. And as debased as this internet discourse is, this is really where it's happening. And like O'Brien won that. I'm not saying that out of admiration.
And you can add to that the post sessions.
Yes.
You know, O'Brien went on CNN for like 5 minutes.
Yes.
And MarkWayne Mullin basically lived on TV for the next 2 days on Conservative TV, just desperately asserting his victory. And just saying, literally every interview. And he did a lot of interviews.
Yeah.
I'm not lying. This is not an exaggeration.
Yeah.
Literally every interview, he worked in only one comment. Like he said different things in different interviews.
Yeah.
But the one thing every interview had in common is he made sure he worked in all of them.
Yeah.
You should have seen the fear in his eyes when I stood up. He made sure in every single interview he said that phrase. You should have seen the fear in his eyes when I stood up. Like he's just so desperate to get that thought out there.
Yeah.
Which just makes him seem even more #little man syndrome.
Yes. Yeah.
It really does. And I say that as a little man. I'm not a big man, but I'm aware of it. And I don't challenge anyone to cage fights. Yeah. Talking about which, so do you have more thoughts on that?
Oh, look, I mean, just to note that when MarkWayne Mullin said, stand your butt up, O'Brien's response was to say, stand your butt up. And then it almost gets lost because then there's a lot of noise, but he says, big guy.
That's a good call.
Yeah.
He
was just, MarkWayne Mullin was just getting trolled immensely.
Yes, he was.
Yeah,
he was.
Yeah.
The most amazing thing for me, though, as I say about the post sessions, is that after thoroughly embarrassing himself like that in public, Mullin still went on this incredibly lengthy tour of conservative media where he seemed to think that punching each other out on the Senate floor is actually a great idea. He tried to argue that this was that he was actually there were no apologies or anything like that. It was just actually no, we should have gone on with it because that's a good thing to do.
And keep in mind, too, this isn't anything new. Andrew Jackson challenged 9 people to a duel when he was president, and he also knocked one guy out at a White House dinner. There's been caниes before in the Senate, too. Maybe we should bring some of that back, and it'll keep people from thinking they're so tough and make us sit at a table, and we can actually work out our differences without poking at each other and want to run to cameras and call people names. Maybe if we have some type of respect because we know there's going to be consequences for your actions, then maybe we can move on with all this, I don't know, jargon that happens around this place.
Maybe if we have canings and thrashings, then we can move on and respect each other. To be clear, it's Mullin who started every bout of running his mouth off.
Yes.
Like the first time back in April, it was Mullin who went after O'Brien. And O'Brien went back. The second time in June, it was Mullin who brought up O'Brien when he wasn't even there.
Yeah.
That's what O'Brien was responding to with his tweets.
Yes.
And then this time around, it was Mullin who brought up the anytime, any place thing and took him on again.
Yeah.
All 3 times, O'Brien has started nothing.
Yes.
He's only responded to Mullin running his mouth off.
Yes.
So it's worth emphasizing that. Unsurprisingly, Sean Hannity also decided that this would be a great idea. And back in the day, everyone just boxed on.
When I grew up, it was a little bit of a different time. When me and my friends, when we played football, when we played basketball, I played hockey, I don't think there was a single day that we were playing sports where we didn't drop the gloves or, have a brief interlude of, throwing fists and it'd be over. You pick up and you start playing again. When all of a sudden did we become that woke that the thought of two people, one responding to a threat directly saying, okay, you threatened me. Here's your opportunity. Take me up on it.
Yeah, well, it's political correctness. It's all of a sudden you got to worry about somebody's feelings, but oh, by the way, the left can say whatever they want.
So, not a single day you didn't get into a fist fight, Sean, when you were playing hockey and other sports. I don't think the problem is that people are so woke and so politically correct today that they don't get into constant fist fights. I think the problem was back in the day, you hung around with a bunch of dickheads, Sean. I think maybe Sean was the problem if wherever he went, there were fist fights.
It would be interesting to see how his friends remember this.
Yes, it would. Yes, it would. It really would. Anyway, last word goes to Mullin, who concluded...
Of course, the last word is going to go to
Because if it didn't, he would challenge me to a cage fight.
Yes.
He probably still will anyway. Last word goes to Mullin, who concluded to Hannity that he actually had no other option but to challenge O'Brien repeatedly to a cage fight.
And we need more of this, to be quite frank. I'm not saying more violence, but we need more people to be taught a lesson and be called out on what they say. You got to be responsible for the words.
The way I read his tweet to you is he called you out. He's the one that said he wanted this exchange, and all you were doing is saying, okay, tough guy, let's go.
That's right.
I think any other response kind of would have been a little gutless.
I would agree with that. I mean, what did people want me to do? If I didn't do that, people in Oklahoma would be pretty upset at me. That's not how we raise, and I'm supposed to represent Oklahoma values.
Yeah.
Now, you know what I'm not going to do?
What are you not going to do?
I'm not going to demand that either of them renounce violence.
No. Well, I mean, they're due for a punch on, aren't they?
Yeah.
It happens every day.
Yeah. I want to see them punch each other.
Yeah, that's a great call. Well, Oklahomans would demand it.
That's right.
Because that's the Oklahomans I'm talking about who thought that Mullin had no option but to follow up on a single mean tweet from 4 months earlier with a challenge to a cage fight on the Senate floor. If he'd responded in any other fashion, they would have all been disappointed in his poor values.
All of them.
And so those people would want to see him fight Sean Hannity, I'm sure.
Yeah. Got to fight someone.
I feel like I've done service to this story.
I think that you have.
It's a pretty good story.
I think that you have. You won't see this anywhere else.
No, you won't.
Because every other media outlet is too gutless to show the full story.
I'll see you in the cage media.
Yeah.
In the octagon. Do you have anything else to add to this?
I don't know what I could possibly add
fair enough.
to this, but you know who is going to add something more to this?
Who's this?
MarkWayne Mullin. We have not seen the end of this.
There's no doubt we have not seen the end of him.
Absolutely not seen the end of this.
New podcast favourite.
We look forward to updating you.
Okay, talking about zany guys in Congress. There's so many zany people in Congress. Dave, tell me about George Santos.
So, the rats and snakes in the Ethics Committee have issued a 56-page report into George Santos, which is apparently...
That would just be his charges alone, I would have thought.
It apparently has upset him so much that he's announced he is not running for re-election next year, which is a massive crime against comedy.
He is too beautiful for this world.
Yes, I've got to admit I haven't read the ethics report, but I read this Washington Post report on it, which this was the standout paragraph to me. Some of the more egregious findings were centered on a consulting company called Redstone that was founded by Santos under the guise of being an outside group helping Santos's election campaign. However, Redstone was not registered with the Federal Election Commission, and documents showed thousands of dollars from Redstone were transferred to one of Santos's personal checking accounts. It's not clear whether it was earning interest or not. The funds were used, among other things, to pay down personal credit card bills, to make a $4,127.80 purchase at luxury brand Hermes, and to make smaller purchases at OnlyFans, a subscription site that contains adult content, according to the report. I just love the way that last sentence kind of pretends that Washington Post readers won't know what OnlyFans is, or that the reporter somehow does. Oh, apparently, according to this report, that's a site that contains adult content.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Yes. But that's just that is fantastic. That's what he was using his campaign donations for. Also, that's another piece of evidence for the theory that we put forward earlier in the podcast about why Congress isn't getting anything done.
You're right.
These days. So, so George is pretty upset. But he is not running for re-election. I mean, I don't think I ever believed he really was running for re-election.
No, I don't think he's going to win.
But now, it would be really interesting to see who would still donate to him. I mean, all kinds of people would vote for him because it's funny. Yeah, but donating to him would probably be taking it a little bit too far.
Well, many people might not know they're donating to him when they are.
That's true. Yes. So who knows what is next for George, but it's not going to involve Congress.
I'm feeling really, really, really confident. When we talked about George last time, like 3 weeks ago.
Yep.
And we were talking about him making one of those TV shows.
Yes.
Where he plays himself.
Yes.
And it's about him being screwed up.
Yes. Yeah.
That's so going to happen.
I think it will.
Like he's one of the very few people shameless enough. He's got that reality TV shamelessness.
He absolutely does.
To go through. Or maybe he'll just be in a reality show. One of the two.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's he's definitely got a future in TV.
Yes.
For about a year.
Yes. Yeah.
And then we'll never hear from him again.
Can I just mention a total side note? But I was thinking about when we were young, Imelda Marcos, the wife of Ferdinand Marcos, the former dictator of the Philippines. Yeah, exactly. Shoe woman. When you think of her, you think of shoes. Her shoe profligacy, her extravagant shoe habit was like the symbol of dictatorial corruption, right? It was basically the synonym. A lot of our listeners might be too young to remember this, but when you talked about Imelda Marcos, you were talking about people stealing massive amounts from dictators stealing massive amounts from the people and spending it on themselves. And so I was thinking this morning, I wonder how many pairs of shoes she actually had, because I remember you would always see these pictures of lots and lots of shoes. It was only 3,000 pairs.
Well, that's still a lot of pairs, man.
Yeah, but
I got one pair of shoes.
Yeah, okay. Okay, neither you nor Imelda Marcos are entirely normal in this respect. By the way, he's not actually wearing shoes.
I was going to reach down to pick them up to show you, but I don't even have them with me.
This is how important his shoes are. They're too important to wear. But I'm just thinking, by today's standards, 3,000 isn't very much. I was somehow remembering 30,000 pairs, but maybe that's because the last 20 years have been spent in the social media era where, if you went on Instagram now and bragged about having 3,000 pairs of shoes, what kind of reaction would you get? That's nothing.
I don't know. Maybe you're saying too much about yourself here, Dave.
I'd
be pretty impressed by 3,000
I'm not saying it it's obviously out of the ordinary. But I'm just saying that by kind of Instagram standards now, that's not even dictator rich.
You reckon?
And also,
think about how much storage you need for 3,000 pairs of shoes.
Some of the things that have been done since then, some of the dictatorial wealth accumulation that's happened since then, just puts it massively to shame.
Yeah. Okay.
The Prime Minister of Malaysia and his wife, who were involved in the 1MDB scandal, which that involved absconding with $5 billion, albeit a lot of that went to a very strange character called Joe Low, who literally blew it all on partying with Leonardo DiCaprio.
Okay.
Like by today's standards. Now, this is also not to minimize the crimes of Imelda Marcos, because each one of those pairs of shoes was like way more than the annual income of the poorest, Filipinos at the time. But still, I do think that what is expected now from corruption has just massively ballooned.
Maybe.
Yeah, and sorry, this was just an aside.
No, that's
that
right.
came in. Yeah. Maybe this is just like I don't know that many pairs of shoes.
I think we're going to need the Peppers to weigh in on this. I think this is today's comment question. Tell us what you think about 3,000 pairs of shoes. Now, to be clear, Dave isn't saying that that's normal.
No, I'm not saying that that's normal.
Like, for a freak, for a freak is 3,000 pairs of shoes significant?
For a dictator who stakes everything on extravagance.
Yeah.
Does that actually seem like you're not really doing it large?
I'm saying that that's still impressive even by dictator standards. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I think it was probably impressive by the standards of the time.
It definitely was by standards of the time.
Yes.
But I think even today, 3,000 pairs of shoes gets you a news.com article. I really do. But I might be wrong. You tell me what you think, Peppers. Let the Peppers decide. That's okay. All right. Last congressional. We've really spent a long time in Congress, but this is there's a lot of freaks.
Yes.
I've got some updates on Nancy Mace I'd like to share with you, including this interesting little side I foreshadowed before.
Yes.
There was a Daily Beast piece now about 3 weeks ago on Nancy Mace, but I just kept it here in my notes.
Yes. Yep.
There was they happened upon a 2021 strategy memo from the Nancy Mace office, where she was described as the, in capitals, freshman thought leader on federal issues.
Really?
And this manual gave her a nickname, National Nancy.
National Nancy.
Yes. Nancy is thoughtful and hardworking on issues important to the Low Country, this manual said. Former staffers told the Daily Beast that piece was entirely written by Nancy Mace herself. The communications director, according to this manual, is expected to send out at least one press release per day. That's interesting. More interesting, they need to book Mace on a national TV outlet between 1 and 3 times per day.
Whoa.
9 times per week at a minimum.
Yeah.
And on local TV channels at least 6 times per week, the manual said. That's one thing, that manual. The next thing, out of the 62 bills that Mace has introduced since 2021, only one ultimately became law. It was the renaming of a post office in Hilton Head Island, South Carolina. And then there's a quote from one of her staffers. Daily Beast is really good, these bitchy articles. From one of her former staffers, saying, it's not normal for a member to prioritize media and comms over actual legislation like that. In my experience with and in other offices, comms serves to promote what the member is doing legislatively. In Mace's office, legislation served to get her more media opportunities.
Yes. And can I just give you an example of one of these pieces of legislation? Yeah. So you may be aware, any panda in the world is the property of China.
Yes.
Regardless of where it is, even if a panda cub is born in another country, it's still the property of China.
Yep.
All pandas are in other countries on a lease base, on a 20-year lease basis, which, by the way, the life expectancy of a panda in captivity, if it makes it to 25 years, that's pretty good. So, like the fact that pandas are going home from the United States at the moment, I think it's been a little bit overblown. People are saying like this is the end of panda diplomacy. It is partly because all of these panda leases are expiring. But anyway, Nancy Mace wasn't having any of that.
It's a bit of Shawshank Redemption about these pandas.
Back in 2021, she actually authored a bill that would say any panda born in the United States is an American panda.
Really? Citizenship papers.
That's right. Yes. which is ironic given how many Republicans have turned against the idea of birthright citizenship.
Yes.
A lot of Republicans would say that panda is an anchor baby. But she was, because she described these pandas as, tools of CCP propaganda, and she didn't want an American panda to be a tool of CCC propaganda.
How could anyone suggest that her legislation is just merely to get her attention when she tries to pass bills like that?
The sad thing is, I don't think that one even got very much attention.
No.
Certainly didn't get as much attention as it merited, in my view.
Poor Nancy. I should say, when we're talking her legislation, that she did manage to get a bipartisan bill to the floor just before McCarthy got yeeted. Katie Porter co-sponsored a bill with her.
Really?
Yep. And this bill proposes, it's still there, sitting there, but it just hasn't been voted on. Proposes removing the college degree requirement for cybersecurity expert hiring by the federal government.
Is that so that they can hire 13-year-olds who are the real cutting-edge experts in this stuff?
Possibly. I don't want to speak for Nancy Mace, but I do want to just say what it's called, the act. It's called the Modernizing the Acquisition of Cybersecurity Experts Act. Have you put it together yet?
Mace?
The Mace Act. She named an act after herself. Like it's those times when they do acronyms, it's pretty bad. But I've never seen someone name an act after themselves.
I was going to say, this actually sounds like a pretty sensible piece of legislation. I'm sure there are people who could do this stuff without a college degree, but no, when you said the name, okay.
The Mace Act. Okay.
Mace Act.
So now we get to the interesting aside, which has nothing to do with the Daily Beast article. I just want to share that because I found it all very amusing.
Yes, yep.
And I know the Peppers are as interested in Nancy Mace as I am. Tim Burchett. Remember him? He's the guy who just got elbowed in the back.
Still got the bruise.
Yes. Okay. In one of his interviews afterwards on Newsmax, he was being very reasonable. Like I said, he wasn't talking smack. He wasn't.
Newsmax is where all the reasonable people.
Yeah, totally. He wasn't being a MarkWayne Mullin. He was praying for Kevin McCarthy, etc. Yeah. Anyway, one of the Newsmax anchors had something very interesting to say about Kevin McCarthy and Nancy Mace, and Tim Burchett seemed to know about it as well. So I'll share it with the Peppers.
Oh.
He also has $17 million in an account that he'll be messing in a lot of people like mine and Nancy Mace's campaigns, I'm sure. And so
I don't know if he does that with Nancy Mace. She could come back at him with some stuff that he doesn't want out there in the public, I think, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, she's already told me. She said, I hope he does that with me, and she'll take care of him. She takes care of her own.
Isn't that interesting? I don't know what they're referring to.
I don't know what they're referring to, but it's clearly something well known enough.
I was going to say
that it's reached inside joke status.
Yeah,
on Newsmax.
Exactly. When the Newsmax anchors are,
if you know what I mean,
are laughing it up about it.
Yeah,
I suspect we'll find out very soon what that is about.
Yes.
So anyway, there you go. Just throw that out there.
Okay.
You were talking about panda diplomacy a second ago. Do you want to follow up because the next topic is you talking about Xi versus Biden.
That's right. So Xi Jinping is in California at the moment for the Apex Summit. And before that, he met with Biden, which was significant in the sense of picking the relationship back up off the floor. We're not talking about raising it to the next level. We're talking about the best that they could hope for was getting it back to where they were last year before Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan. So obviously US-China relations have not been very good for a long time. That Nancy Pelosi visit to Taiwan, which we talked about a lot last year, really inflamed things. The surveillance balloon over the United States equally inflamed things, and we didn't talk about that because we weren't on at the time, but that led to the cancellation of Antony Blinken's visit to Beijing. More serious, though, the Nancy Pelosi visit to Taiwan led to China cutting off military-to-military communication with the United States. Now, the point of military-to-military communication is that it helps de-escalate things that can happen by accident or things that can happen by miscalculation. Deconflicting, I think, is the term that they use. And it's a very, very important thing to have in place when you've got the potential for a conflict that could potentially be kicked off by mistake or by miscalculation. That has not been in place for the last 12 months. And one of Biden's aims in this meeting with Xi was to restore that military-to-military communication.
And did he?
Yes, they did. They've agreed to it. Now, that is pretty significant. Okay, that is good that that's been restored. And my reading on this is both of these leaders are in a weaker position politically than they were in 1 year ago. So 1 year ago, Xi had just been reappointed without incident as the paramount leader of China to a third term. Biden was coming off these surprisingly good results for Democrats in the primary. Now, Biden is facing his worst polls, as we've said, probably of any Democrat in about 20 years, renewed questions about whether he should be the Democratic candidate at all. Xi has had a terrible year, and he didn't have particularly good years in the lead up to this either. It was his handling of COVID that has really done the most political damage to him. Anything that can cause protests on the scale that happened in China earlier this year because of the handling of COVID is pretty serious. And to recap for those of you who are unaware of this, China had these incredibly strict lockdowns in place for a very long time that were absolutely hated, which were then basically suddenly lifted, leading to waves of, I think it was COVID deaths in the millions.
Yeah, I was gonna say, literally millions.
Yeah, in a short space of time. So basically, it's almost like everything that every other country did wrong, China did it all in quick succession, and that was very, very unpopular. And obviously, within the Chinese system, there's not much of a risk that Xi Jinping's going to be overthrown. But the Chinese system is a very big and complicated thing. And as much as Xi Jinping centralizes power, it's not like he can just direct everything. He relies on his allies within the system. And his danger is actually losing influence within that system. That is how he would lose power. It would be a process of gradually losing influence over policy. So both of them are politically weakened. With everything else that's going on right now, the last thing that either of them needs is some kind of conflict with the other, is some kind of crisis involving the other. So that was my read on basically both of them wanted to re-implement protocols that were not going to allow that to happen. It has been pointed out by some commentators, so David Sanger, who's the veteran national security correspondent for the Washington Post, he's argued Xi Jinping is actually clearly in a weaker position, and he has actually come to the United States with a bit of a different demeanor than he has had in the past, looking a lot more conciliatory, but also really looking for deals. And so the other substantive thing that happened in these talks was an agreement to curb things that would lead to the production of fentanyl, and that'll happen very quickly. And then she was off to basically pitch investment in China to American business people. This is one of the major things that he needed from this, is reinvestment of American business in China. So there is some feeling at the moment that both of them are weakened, but Xi is a little bit more weakened than Biden. And so this is a good time for Biden to press on certain things. The issue apparently in the talk, so that, the issue of American restrictions on superconductors and chips came up.
Yep.
The United States is still framing this as a national security issue for them, but what it I think clearly is an economic competition issue. And at the moment, the US is not giving way on that. And I think that the way that she has come to the United States shows, it really confirms that this is now actually a very, very useful bargaining chip for the US. And we've talked about this before. The fact that this incredibly punitive set of restrictions were put in place without Biden ever talking about it and without China ever talking about it. Now, I think that this was very deliberate, right? So if Trump had done something like this, it really would have been, would have been bellowed from the rooftops, look at what we're doing to China. Biden didn't do that. The administration didn't do that because they didn't want to force China into a response.
Yeah.
I think that they did it. I think it is partly because this is Biden's vision of how economic competition is going to work. But I think that they also did it because they realized that this is the mother of all economic bargaining chips, and they didn't. If they had really talked about it a lot and sounded very committed to it, that would have lessened its value as a bargaining chip because it would have made it a lot harder to give it up. So I think at the there was a lot of reporting about nothing of any substance was achieved. That's not quite true. Those two things especially the reestablishment of military communication was important. But with this relationship, so often the symbolism is actually the substance, right? The fact that the talks happened is very important. I'd also like to point out there's a lot of media discourse recently about the unlimited partnership between China and Russia. And sure, this is something that those two countries like to talk about, but also the idea that Russia and China and Iran are increasingly all on the same side of international conflict. So they're this big anti-Western bloc. This was just a reminder, China is actually very different. It's a lot more powerful than either of those other two countries. If there is a relationship, it's actually one that looks a lot more at the moment like vassalage. Right, that these two countries, they are relying on China for protection. Yeah. And what this meeting showed, it's just a reminder of the fact there's no way that leaders of Russia or Iran could fly to the United States and have these kinds of meetings. China is not one of these pariahs. China is still part of the club. It's still part of the club, even if it's constantly challenging the club's rules. It still does have such a relationship of economic interdependence with the United States that it's probably never not going to be part of the club unless there's a serious military conflict. And even if both of the countries do go more down a path of trying to economically disentangle themselves, that's still going to require a huge amount of cooperation between these two countries. So, the relationship is here, and it is here to stay. Probably unless there's a military conflict, as much as the principals involved might not like each other very much. And I think that this meeting was very reflective of that reality.
Sounds like you're also saying that Biden probably did a pretty good job.
I wasn't there.
No.
Yeah.
But to the extent that you're trying to read the situation.
Biden got what he wanted out of it. I think to some extent she got what he wanted out of it as well. So you could probably call it a successful, international negotiation. But I think that, the Biden administration, they set the bar very low. They set expectations very low for what they wanted to achieve. They said what we want to achieve is reestablishing military-to-military communication, and and they got it. And that was despite the fact that apparently, according to one report of it, she said, we don't really need military-to-military communication because we can always just call each other. But the problem is that often the kinds of need for military-to-military communication we're talking about are happening in situations where you've literally got like a couple of minutes to sort out, some kind of problem. You don't necessarily have the time that is required to have a call between two leaders. So, I don't want to talk up Biden's diplomatic skills too much, but I think that he does seem to have done pretty well out of this.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm going to go to some correspondence now on River to the Sea, which we were talking about a few weeks back.
Yep.
This is from Nick. Nick said, just a point on the River to the Sea slogan. It's not just a Palestinian phrase, and indeed it predates Hamas by some time. The idea that it's inherently anti-Semitic or even that politicians should shy away from its use is pretty dishonest when you consider that Zionist extremists have also used it to express their wish for the eradication of Palestine. And he says CF Netanyahu's Likud party, including in their founding charter as well. It's a phrase that contains the hopes and dreams of people in that particular bit of land. Some hope for peaceful coexistence, some hope for the destruction of the other side. As such, it's been used to express all kinds of views from across the spectrum of one of the most entrenched and difficult disputes in the world. So those who try to cast it as somehow off limits for polite society are, in my view, doing so in very bad faith. And he quoted an article from the AP about it with the history. I've also had correspondence with a number of Jewish people who all said the same thing, essentially, which was that from the river to the sea, as far as they were concerned, is definitely a genocidal chant. They all said basically it means Palestine will be free of non-Palestinians, which is what we were saying before, of what some were saying, and not a 1 or 2 state solution, definitely no Jews. Now, the people who were saying that, one of the people I spoke to about this, they didn't presuppose to speak for all Jews. They suggested I spoke to someone from the ADC, the Anti-Defamation Commission, that's the ADL in Australia, which is a fine idea. But I actually have sent some questions to them, but not about this, about some other stuff as well. But anyway, I'm just saying that I got a lot of correspondence about this. But the thing which really stood out to me, all the Jewish correspondence was private messages.
Right.
Nick's correspondence was public. I got 4 different messages from Jewish people saying the same thing. And I thought it was noteworthy. I didn't get much private correspondence, much direct messages. But the reason I wanted to note that was that this is along the lines of something I was saying to Bill the other day in the last podcast. It doesn't say good things about our society that they all feel they have to speak in private.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like that's a sign in itself. Because they don't feel comfortable expressing a view about anything really in a public forum where they can be attacked.
Yes, yeah.
Because they're expecting to be attacked.
Yeah, yeah.
And probably expecting to be attacked in a nasty way.
Yes, yeah.
So that's the first thing I just want to just raise. I just found that interesting.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
But, now, of course, there can be more than one usage out there of any particular phrase.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
But it's obviously a case of perspective, and Nick and I, like when I was talking about this 2 weeks ago, I was approaching it. This is one of the reasons I wanted to bring this up. I was thinking about this. I was approaching it from what the user means.
Yes,
and that's what the way Nick approached it as well. What the user means when they say it, right? Which is fair enough. Yeah, people can mean different things, whatever. The Jewish correspondents that I was speaking to were approaching it from how the Jewish people interpret it when it's said around them.
Yes.
And it struck me that if this was any other minority group, how the minority group interpret the phrase would be the only thing that matters. No one would care what you meant when you said it.
Yeah.
They would only care how people interpreted it. And especially when we're talking about the far left, like who, they worry about safe spaces and microaggressions. They care very much about how people interpret phrases when they're used. And I just thought, it's worth noting that we're in a situation for whatever reason where people don't feel like Jewish people get to feel safe in the same way as other minorities get to feel safe.
Yes. Yeah.
Just wondering if you had any thoughts about that.
I would say there are plenty of ways to express the the positive version of from the river to the sea, other than saying from the river to the sea.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
And I mean, you're right. It's a phrase that has been around for so long. Yes, it was used by Likud in 1982. I think they officially dropped it at some point, but was used by the PLO. It's had all of these different versions. It can refer to, one state, multi-ethnic democracy. It can refer to all kinds of wonderful things as well as genocidal versions of it. So basically, when you are using this phrase, there are all kinds of ways that people can interpret it. And I don't think that you can just absolve yourself of responsibility by saying, well, this is what I meant by it, especially when you're a public figure.
Yeah. I was going to say that I would compare this, and maybe this is a bad comparison, but this is just what I was thinking of. I would compare this to when we talk about acknowledgements before an event, for instance.
Yes.
Right? Now, personally, when I hear an acknowledgement for an event, I'm going to be honest. I think to myself, at best, that seems token, and at worst, it seems like virtue signaling from the person doing the acknowledging. It's about them. It's not about the Indigenous people they're trying to acknowledge. And like that's how I interpret it. But having said that, it's not about me.
No,
it's about the people who are being acknowledged.
Yes,
and if the Indigenous people feel there's constructive and positive, then we should do it, as far as I'm concerned, because it's not about me.
Yes.
It's just and I think only dickheads kind of go out of their way to refuse to do something for other people that costs them nothing.
Yes.
Knowing that it will upset those other people.
Yes.
And simply because they want to demonstrate that they have the right to not do that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yes, you have the right to be a dickhead, but isn't it better to not be a dickhead? Is what I say. So just to pick up what you're saying there, my take on this, I think, because I've been thinking about this a lot. My take is that Rashida Tlaib, she can say that if she wants. She has the right to say that if she wants. I don't think she should be censored or censured.
No.
But I think if she insists on using a phrase that she knows upsets the people who will be listening to that phrase, then I think that's ordinary behavior. Just use a different chant. There are other chants.
I was going to say, yes. There are definitely other ways of expressing that sentiment rather than a slogan which is just completely bound up with the conflict.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So that's my thought on that.
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to leave you time for your final section on football.
Oh yes.
Yeah. So I'll just do a couple of quick things on. Now we're in Israel. Just a couple of things. I'm not going to have enough time, but the next podcast is on Thanksgiving or just after Thanksgiving. So
right.
So there'll be nothing to talk about.
Yeah.
So all these things I've been hoarding,
yes.
I'll be able to use then. But okay, a couple of updates with Israel. First up is I can't believe I've got another update in the hospital, but just keeps on going on and on and on. The hospital that was bombed, I'm talking about like a month ago. Not bombed, the car park of the hospital was bombed. I saw a really interesting clip, which I just wanted to share with you guys. I'm not going to play it now. I was going to have it in the homework, in the blurb, under the Facebook video and the YouTube video if you want to have a look. It was from Channel 4. They did some really interesting work, I thought, where they used earshot technology, which is audio technology, to analyze the audio recording of the bomb. And using that technology, it seemed like that they suggested it came from the other side of where Israel was suggesting they thought it came from. Right. But then on top of that, they had crater analysis as well of like the minor details from the crater, which also backed that up. Which doesn't mean that Israel's responsible. I still don't think Israel's responsible for the reasons I said before, which is that first of all when you look at the actual explosions and stuff, it's not the kind of thing that would be from an airstrike. And on top of that, the fact that Hamas had control over the site and they used it to remove all the fragments. I think that says something. Yeah. So anyway, I don't think it's Israel. But what I do think is that, and I think this is evidence, if you're interested, that we don't know what it was. Because it's probably not an airstrike, doesn't mean you know exactly what it is.
No, of course not.
And so I just want to just flag that. Which I thought was interesting. Also, from the same period, that in that same article, that same piece from Channel 4, they use the earshot technology as well to analyze the audio recording. You remember I was saying I was a bit sus on that audio recording that they had of Hamas supposedly talking about it. And what they were saying was that it looks like that's stitched up. That audio recording, which makes it very unlikely to be authentic. So anyway, just
I always have my doubts about that one.
Yeah, so do I, Qatar, I talked about Qatar a little while back saying, well, what's going on? Hamas are just lounging there. Why is no one talking about that? It seems like people are talking about that. The US and Qatar have agreed to revisit the Persian Gulf, to revisit Qatar's association with Hamas after the war. According to 4 diplomats, still undecided as if it's going to involve an exodus of Hamas leaders from Qatar, but They are reevaluating that. There's a Tennessee GOP Congressman Ogles who is co-sponsoring, you love these names, co-sponsoring a bill that would strip Qatar of its special status as a prime ally of the United States unless it ejects the leaders of Hamas. In that article, just a little aside, I just went, what the fuck is this? Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh is reportedly worth more than $4 billion. Khaled Mashal is reportedly worth more than $4 billion, and Hamas political leader Abu Mazouk is estimated to be worth $3 billion. All three of them are in Qatar at the moment.
Wow.
So it's nice to, if that is indeed true, those reports, then that's something worth bearing in mind while you see the entirety of Gaza starving.
Yes.
It's just something.
By the way, in case you heard that reference to the Qatar being what's its official designation? Special super ally.
Special status as a prime ally. A prime ally. An Optimus Prime ally.
In case you're wondering about why that is, it's because of Al Udeid Air Force Base, which is the headquarters of the United States Central Command and the United States Air Force Central Command. Yeah, Qatar is a very important military base. It's a very interesting country in a lot of ways in terms of the number of reasons that people have for absolutely hating it. And yet the number of ways that it's managed to essentially integrate itself in the international system. So it's not just holding the World Cup. It's Al Jazeera. It's it's Qatar Airways. It's hosting one of the most important US military bases in the world. There are a lot of countries that really hate Qatar. I'm not just talking about Congressman Ogles. Congressman Ogles here. There are a lot of other countries in that region who are not big fans of Qatar, and obviously for years in the build up to the World Cup, human rights abuses of labourers and anti-homosexuality laws were a huge focus. Then the World Cup actually happened, and that was it. So Qatar's a very interesting case study in terms of how a country that people have a lot of reasons to dislike it still manages to sort of integrate itself into the international system.
Yeah. I wanted to, do you have 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I'll spend half of that on this topic, ceasefire, and then we can have our football. Okay. Because ceasefire is so much in the news at the moment. I just want to quickly go over some of the logic of that, which I think is worth discussing.
Yep.
Everyone wants a ceasefire. 500 alumni of Biden's 2020 presidential campaign have sent a letter. They're Biden alumni for peace and justice. 400 former campaign staffers of Sanders. 400 from Elizabeth Warren. 400 congressional staffers. They like the number 400. 630 employees of USA. I can keep on going. There's just so many of these letters, and people are talking about ceasefire. Okay, all right. So there's a few considerations here. The first thing is one of the reasons why Israel don't want a ceasefire generally, apart from the fact obviously they don't want Hamas to be in charge. So I'm sure they'd be much keener on a ceasefire if they feel like they've gotten rid of the leadership of Hamas, so they won't just take it over again. Is that Israel is quite sensitive, I think, about ceasefires because there's now a pattern through history of them attaining some kind of advantageous military position, and then because of pressure from America or the international community, them stepping down and then regretting that they didn't take advantage of that military position. So, for instance, in 2006, after their war with Hezbollah in Lebanon, they finally got into a decent military position. They wanted to move Hezbollah back from the border, but they backed down after a UN Security Council resolution, and that which was where Hezbollah was supposed to disarm and withdraw away from the border themselves. It wasn't really implemented properly, and now Hezbollah are all over the border with 150,000 missiles and all the rest of it. And so, so they have a very vivid memory of that, as do America. Jake Sullivan is the one who negotiated a number of these failed ceasefires, and now he's the national security advisor, right? He negotiated the ceasefire of 2012 and the ceasefire of 2021, the one that was just broken by Hamas just now.
Right.
So he's a bit touchy about this as well. The quote from Jake Sullivan is, "A ceasefire done prematurely benefits those who do not abide by any laws, by any rules." And he went on to say, after 9/11, if the terrorists had simply said, "We want a ceasefire," I don't think the United States would have said, "We're going to stop going after terrorists." Having said that...
But if they had, everyone would have been better off,
yes,
ironically.
Yes, you're right. You're
Yes.
right. And also, I'm not sure I'd necessarily draw a direct line between Hamas and Al-Qaeda. They might both be terrorists, but I think they're very different cats.
Yeah.
But anyway, also, but on top of that, Hamas themselves have not really expressed a desire for a permanent ceasefire, at least.
No.
They talk about short-term ceasefires,
Yes.
which makes sense while they're getting the crap bombed out of them.
Yes, yeah.
But if you look at apart from the fact they've broken a number of ceasefires in the past themselves,
Yes.
like just now, October 7 was a breach of a ceasefire. Look at some of the quotes in the New York Times. This is Khalil al-Hayya, member of Hamas's top leadership, told the New York Times that the violence was necessary to, quote, change the entire equation and not just have a clash. We succeeded in putting the Palestinian issue back on the table. Now no one in the region is experiencing calm. Hamas's goal is not to run Gaza and to bring it water and electricity and such. This battle was not because we wanted fuel or laborers. It did not seek to improve the situation in Gaza. The battle was to completely overthrow the situation. Now, the nature of a ceasefire is it replaces the situation.
Yes.
It freezes in place what the status quo is, right?
Yeah.
So that's not necessarily what they're looking for either, right? And Tahir al-Nunu, Hamas media advisor, told the Times, "I hope that the state of war with Israel will become permanent on all the borders and that the Arab world will stand with us." Once again, he doesn't want to return to the status quo.
No.
Right? But then there's also practical problems. Like, for instance, who are you negotiating with when you negotiate with Hamas?
Yes.
They have more than one leader.
Yes. Yeah.
More than one. Like, they don't even necessarily communicate with each other, the different parts of Hamas,
Yes.
right? So there's also other groups fighting. It's not just Hamas.
Yeah.
There's Palestinian Jihad. There's other groups.
Yes, yeah.
So unless you can somehow negotiate with everyone at once, then sure, Israel has one point of negotiation, so they can be restrained, but you can't necessarily restrain the other side entirely because different people and different groups are going to respond in different ways, and it's hard to negotiate with one group of people, right? So that's a complication when it comes to ceasefires. Another one is you need some kind of monitoring capacity to enforce it. Who's going to do the enforcing?
Yeah.
Obviously, Israel can't.
Yeah.
Like America is not a neutral body.
No.
So they don't want to anyway. The UN, it's pretty clear whose side they're on. Like, there aren't really a lot of neutral bodies out there, where both sides go, we trust that person to enforce and to mandate it. So that's another problem as well. There's a standoff on hostages. Netanyahu has explicitly said there will be no ceasefire without the release of the hostages. Hamas have explicitly said there will be no release of hostages until there's a ceasefire. Yeah. And so there's a bit of that going on. So what Biden's been doing is been pushing for what he calls a pause, which seems like a sensible fallback position, which is that, there's two kinds of pauses. There's number one, a humanitarian pause every day of 4 to 6 hours to allow people to escape, to allow humanitarian aid to be moved in and so forth. And then there's a temporary ceasefire, like a 3 or 4 day pause, which is not really a ceasefire. It's a ceasefire for a few days, but then they go back to fighting. So then they don't have all the problems that we just described, right? Now, Biden kept on leaking everything about this, so I thought he was going to screw it up, but maybe he hasn't. It turns out that Israel has, for the last week and a bit, almost 2 weeks now, had the window going, the 4-hour window, and they've had a few 100,000 people escaping down to south through that, which is great. But also, apparently, there is a temporary ceasefire deal theoretically about to be signed in the next couple of days. The Washington Post has been talking about that quite a bit recently. According to, inverted commas, a high-ranking Israeli official, Israeli women and children would be released in groups simultaneously with Palestinian women and children held in Israeli prisons being released.
Right, yeah.
So it's women and children for women and children.
Yeah.
Hostages for prisoners. Hamas has indicated it's ready to release 70 women and children, according to one of its officials. An Arab official told Washington Post that there are at least 120 women and children in Israeli prisons for Palestinians. And a temporary ceasefire, perhaps 5 days, would accompany the exchange of those hostages and prisoners. So that may be the best we can get.
Right.
And we'll see if that happens or not. But I just want to explain to people, because Australians in particular are going on about ceasefires, why it's not such a cinch. Because people go, why don't you do it? So easy, so easy. It's a complicated thing to try to negotiate for these reasons.
Yeah.
Do you have other things to add?
Well, I still definitely think there should be a ceasefire, but as you say, it's complicated. Yeah. I just want to recommend. There's a good article about this in The Conversation by Marika Sosnowski.
Yep.
This was from yesterday.
Yep.
What exactly is a ceasefire? Why is it so difficult to agree to one in Gaza? So she's a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Melbourne, but she's had a lot of experience in the area of ceasefires. One of the things that she points out is that there is no actual international humanitarian law has no provisions relating specifically to when ceasefires should be negotiated, what they need to contain, or how they need to be applied. Right? So there aren't even sort of off-the-shelf legal guidelines waiting there for ceasefires. She also points out there are, a ceasefire can be very difficult to get, but there are potentially other things that could be negotiated in the meantime. So she suggests the amount of ordnance being used on a daily basis by both sides, where or what is being targeted on both sides, the number of aid convoys allowed into Gaza, number of or nationality of hostages to be released, and at what regularity. And she also points out there can be, not suggesting necessarily it'll happen in this case, but she said there is a recent history of ceasefires being used for nefarious purposes. She says, for example, in Syria, local ceasefires and reconciliation agreements have been used during the civil war to allow for the evacuations of citizens from their homes in places like Old Homs and Daraa. Subsequently, a raft of presidential decrees were enacted that enabled the Syrian regime to permanently reappropriate their properties. A different thing that happened in Russia was during the Russian invasion of Ukraine, humanitarian corridors were implemented that allowed people from the besieged city of Mariupol to evacuate. Shortly afterwards, however, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky accused Russia of laying landmines within the corridors to thwart civilians' ability to flee. So there are people who can use them for nefarious purposes as well. Anyway, this is a good article that adds to what you were saying.
I will put it in the homework.
About the complexity of it. Having said all that, I think there absolutely does need to be a ceasefire.
Yep.
And I think that the fact that Biden basically signaled so early that he wasn't going to support one is one of the reasons why Netanyahu has felt like he has an absolutely free hand and has felt free to completely ignore the US on subsequent issues, because Biden put nothing in place from the beginning suggesting there will be a point where we're not actually going to where we're going to tolerate things.
So you think that that Biden if he hadn't given away his hand so quickly, he would have had more control.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, and I'm sure he had reasons for, domestic political reasons as well for giving away his hand that quickly. But in terms of actually being, having a position of strength in negotiations, he gave it up very quickly.
I would say this: I hope that to whatever extent he's retained any hand whatsoever, I'm not hearing a lot about settlers, and this is to me that is the biggest issue all the time.
Yes.
Like it's a pretty big issue going on in Gaza at the moment.
Yeah.
But the settlers just keep on getting ignored.
Yes.
And then I hope that.
Yes. But I just want to say two final things about it. I'm going to leave college football to,
Thanksgiving.
Yes. Yeah. First of all, there are too many fantasies going on about the other side disappearing. Neither side is disappearing. There are basically equal numbers of Israelis and Palestinians in that territory. Nobody is going anywhere. So as much as we talk about, how remote the possibility of something like a two-state solution actually seems, something is going to have to happen because the fantasy of one side will go away, it's it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, it's the old 1% is better than 0%.
Yes, yeah. The second thing is that there are far too many people on both sides who are operating under the theory that there are no civilians on the other side. And that is just a recipe for murder.
Yeah.
That's all I've got to say about that.
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing to say. And I would also add to that it's not just a recipe for murder, but it's also a recipe for having exactly the same fight except for worse in 5 years' time.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. It's I can't believe that I need to say that.
Yeah.
But yes. Anyway. Okay. So we're going to have a real best of all the things we haven't had a chance to talk about next week.
Yes.
There's football. There'll be Biden, Missouri.
Yeah.
Haven't forgotten that.
I'm sure there will. Yeah.
there'll be more Israel stuff. Trust me, I've got notes full of Israel stuff here. Wow, it's going to be great.
Yep.
It'll be a podcast to truly be thankful for. In the meantime, I'll see you next Friday, Dave.
See you next Friday.
And I'll see you guys later. Stay peppy.